Greetings to all who love the truth. Today, we will talk about current events in the new year. Time, that point to the end of everything. Christ is returning Christians. Most are asleep, some suspect his return, and some can't wait. Some are getting impatient. Join in everyone who has the opportunity to accompany the voice of truth, the voice of the times, live. So, today I want to summarize once again and reveal to you interesting details which show us that we are definitely with you. We know the time of our Lord Jesus Christ's return. Everything is over. The world is finished. The time of the church is over. Today we stand on the brink of the final 7 of time, the last 7 years. Israel's time, which is allotted to translate Israel from the old times into a new time, into a new millennium, which will be God's final step in preparing Israel and the nations for eternity. So let's start our political briefing today, first of all. From that moment, from which events have taken on a global scale, the year 2020, we have all been witnesses, participants. The so-called of an incredible time of illness, infection, and quarantine. This is the starting point of the end times. The most important thing we needed to see at this starting point. This is how ready the world, all nations, especially the civilized nations, are ready for a time of colossal imprisonment, colossal slavery. How much more selfish nations are than God-centered? More selfish than God-centered. How much nations are under the influence. Fear for their short, insignificant earthly life. We have seen together an amazing time when for 2 years the governments of the most developed, legal, leading countries neglected constitutions, the rights of the people, laws, and without any clear reason, without explanations, have locked up the vast majority of the Earth's population, over 4 billion people from civilized countries, into a home prison. The main goal, I will repeat once again, this action was to ensure that the church itself realized that the time had come to an end, and most importantly, the nations, under the influence of sheer fear, ready for absolute consent and even slave-like obedience, any whim of the people in power. Unprecedented in the history of modern humanity, when there is agreement between governments and even agreement between obedient peoples, was absolute. Over the course of 2 years, this disaster, in quotes, is not an infectious disaster, but a legal one. We have seen how the world, infectious, but a legal disaster. We have seen how the world, it puts under the same comb not only the rights of peoples, but most importantly, freedom. The freedom of conscience, and religion, the freedom of the church. Churches were forcibly closed. For a year, people were forcibly vaccinated. In the second year of quarantine, people were involuntarily and were compelled to leave their positions if they chose not to receive the vaccine for any personal or medical reason whatsoever. It was an incredible sight. Incredible up to this moment, a grand action. Coordinated, agreed upon, which showed the main point. The people are ready for complete control. There were no super violent actions from law enforcement. They were just controlling the process. People, they limited themselves in their own rights. People couldn't and didn't even want to seek the truth about whether there really is such a global and serious problem in the world that threatens humanity with extinction. After 2 years of this nightmare, when lonely voices of medical professionals around the world, they were suppressed, when incredible government censorship on social media prevailed over common sense, when apart from the single global official position, nobody couldn't express any personal opinion, even what I said and what was based on common sense and reality. My messages were absolutely destroyed and continue to be destroyed to this day. It was a colossal rehearsal for whether the people are ready to collectively fall under the influence of control, whether the nations are ready to work together to fall under the influence of control. Just one medical organizations with a questionable reputation. Moreover, people today are ready for this, to submit to yet another and the last leader of this world, who is referred to in the Bible as the Antichrist. And he will lead the movement against God, against everything that is called God. Not only against the Christian faith, not only against Israel, but against any faith where a person is unimaginably 21st cosmic century. Present yourself to the world in the most convincing way. Like God, who has materialized in the flesh of false Christ, the son of Satan. The spiritual nature of the fallen angel will be embodied in a real person. And he will serve the same amount of time that Christ served, 3.5 years. I'll talk about this in more detail later in the book of Revelation. So, the year 2020 began with an incredible collapse of the global economy. The world has become still. We were forbidden to go to the store. We were forbidden to buy anything except for a limited amount of food, because transportation had stopped, deliveries had stopped. There were restricted flights and travel between countries were halted, borders were closed. Then, after 6 months, it began. Vaccination began, and after that, a giant colossal demand arose. A demand at the state level. The certificate for this vaccination, which gave you a broader range of rights compared to those who refused, this questionable one, which has already been proven this year, in the 24th year of this questionable vaccination, as one of 2 medical companies that presented the vaccine for the world in 2024. After all these vaccines were destroyed and deemed dangerous to human life and health. We also saw with you that at the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025, the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States, under the new government, affirmatively stated that in reality, this infection was synthetic and escaped from the lab, Wuhan, China. What we have asserted from the very beginning, because if the infection had a natural origin, the governments would never have acted so coordinated. In all countries of the world, they knew some secret that they kept from their people in order not to face opposition to such. In all countries of the world, they did not act. They knew a certain secret that they kept from their peoples so as not to oppose such a thing. An economic monster like China, on which the economies of most civilized countries in the world depend, as their economies are essentially based on the physical territory of China, and the people of China are direct participants in the production of gross products for many countries. And this problem is impossible. It would somehow be resolved immediately if China were accused of being responsible for the origin of this disease, for being the one to blame in the origin of this disease. So 2020, we saw colossal control over the people, which was produced quickly, unprincipled, unlawful, unconstitutional. And the people voluntarily took themselves into custody, locked themselves in home prisons. The most important thing we saw is that psychologically and mentally, all the peoples of civilized countries are absolutely ready for this. To the dictatorship of fear, second, very important, what happened during this time. Children stopped attending schools, students, universities, and most people are working. Thus, the state forcibly led to the majority of the Earth's population was forced to do what they were forced to do. Find a way out for communication, for education, and for work. This way out. The World Wide Web, the Internet, appeared. It's indeed astonishing, but especially elderly people who are not inclined to this astral world. They were forced to enter it and become part of the global network of global instantaneous influence on the hearts and minds of people. In the first 2 years of this global quarantine, people changed their behavior model. They cut off direct connection with the material world and entered a new phase, a new level and dimension of the virtual world that they delved into, and from which to this day they are unable to escape. And Christians who took advantage of the opportunities of this virtual world have also become deeply stuck in it, because this world is extremely convenient. He doesn't demand anything from you, physical actions. It doesn't require you to think deeply, and efforts. The world has prepared colossal, incredible tools such as YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, Facebook, and other social networks for any taste and for any kind of your needs, for use in your activities. It turned out that humanity is capable of staying at home for 2 years with children and the elderly, with sick people. To stay cooped up at home with children and the elderly, with sick people, in a colossal global restriction of rights and opportunities. The fruit is so, I repeat, that it was impossible for 2 years to buy a light bulb in a store or buy plumbing fixtures. If it broke down for you, only the grocery sections of the stores were open. All other construction and household sections were closed. Specifically, there were also restrictions on alcohol and other issues. Curfews were imposed. If take common sense into account, it's hard to understand how all of this could have happened. At the same time, during these 2 years, legal experts who shout about the rights of ants all over the world, or about the violation of the rights of these microbes, suddenly everyone collectively shut their mouths, and only a few lonely voices trying to break through somewhere were distributed on the outskirts of the universe, and they were either not heard or ignored or forcibly fined. And they were silenced at the level of the government and law enforcement agencies, which were specifically authorized to ensure that the people were sitting on a chain without a lock. So the people voluntarily put chains on themselves, and there were no locks on them. This is a major milestone in modern history, showing that we need to understand that such a number of people, never in the history of the earth have so many people lived on the planet at the same time. Approximately almost 8 billion people, 5 of which lived in developed civilized countries, voluntarily limited themselves, not just in their rights, but they limited themselves in normal human activities. During this time, there have been irreversible changes in the psyche of both individual people and in mass psychosis of peoples. People were forced to dive deep into a new reality of the virtual world, virtual life. And they liked it. It's cheap, accessible, easy life. Where, I repeat, you don't need physical effort. Moreover, you don't need logical effort. There are many virtual instruments in this world that have been built over time. This quarantine, a new reality on our earth. Grandmothers and old ladies, small children under 2 years old, all were immersed during the time from 2020 to 2022 into this wild, artificial, imposed reality. Neon paradise. Paradise, which instead of a divine, beautiful, heavenly sky, blue has a muted shade of darkness, bluish shade of darkness, in which a person falls asleep. He is kind of being hypnotized. A virtual world where there are unexplored paths, colossal opportunities for communication where you don't have to strain yourself. A world where there are almost all the answers to all questions. A world where with the push of a button you can get the information and help you need. But this, I repeat, is a virtual, electronic, unreal reality of a new type and kind. People like a herd of sheep, were herded into this new cosmic pen of neon. Convenient, comfortable, cheap paradise. We must consider the end of time before the return of our Lord, starting from this important moment, I repeat, which is a milestone. The end of everything is a change in mentality, the imposing of a new kind of the virtual world, virtual tools, which in 4 years after beginning the introduction of nations into this pen, this virtual world has been transformed beyond recognition today, thanks to free, accessible, the use of artificial intelligence, next, the Bible is also for us, beautifully presents the divine story, that it is cyclical, that God is just and honest, even with his enemy Satan. And he has it too, has all the same opportunities and tools that God uses in his relationships with man. When we turn to the first chapters of the Bible, we see that in the Garden of Eden, God is in the midst. In paradise, he not only planted the tree of life, but also the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life represents God, while the tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents Satan. I had a question for God. Why in the USA when the fathers of this country were drafting the Constitution, where they wrote in the amendments about freedom of rights and religion, why did God allow it in an absolutely Christian country? At that time, it was not easy for America to emerge over time. Sects of pseudo-Christians like the Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, but there are some in America, the right for Satanists to practice their cult. They have the right alongside, with statues of Jesus Christ or crosses, to place statues of Satan. They have churches, Satan's churches with inverted crosses. And I imagine to myself, if I were ruling this country, would I allow this to happen? Yes, I would allow it, in the end. Because in the Garden of Eden, God allowed Satan to have his representation in the form of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, just as God had his representation in the form of the tree of life. God is not afraid. Competition. The choice always involves competition. We can either move forward or backward. Today, while talking to the Lord, I asked him one question. Cherubim, presented to us in the Bible, guardians of God's holiness, have 4 faces. But God, who sits on the throne, is like us. As a human, he has 1 face. And I said, the Lord's 4 faces represent absolute perfection. If you control all 4 sides simultaneously at the same time of your life, you are a perfect person. God gave me clarity on this matter, simply answering, of course I am perfect. The question is that 1 face, it shows 1 direction of choice. And God says, I have only 1 choice, and you have only 1 choice at the same time. We can't look both straight ahead and back at the same time. two-faced people, hypocritical people. It's exactly them who have two faces on both sides. These are the people who eat from two tables, who eat from two trees. Adam, having tasted from the tree of knowledge, along with Eve, soon decided to taste from the tree of life as well. Hypocrisy is when you have two faces. You are looking in two opposite directions at the same time. God is not like that. His character is evident. He does not change. The question of the four faces of the cherubim is quite different. There is a different revelation there. But how convenient would it be for us to have eyes in front and behind, and even better, on the sides? With God, it's not like that, and with humans, it's not like that either. We make one choice at a time. We can only look in one direction. That's why the Bible is against divided hearts that look in two directions. Hypocrites, please both one party and the opposing one. Since 2020, because of this colossal collapse, because of the colossal tremor of the church, where all voices, television voices, they fell silent. All the great ones who waved their fists in the air have disappeared. They vanished like mist in the sun. And suddenly it became clear and obvious that those who claimed they could blow Satan away with just a breath from their lips could blow Satan away in any tough circumstances. All these great preachers, prophets, are old men. They got scared. These practical cowards turned out to be nothing more than theological talkers. I remember that for 4 months, no one didn't go on air in your personal world, nor in the Russian-speaking world. Everyone was waiting for clarity, but it never came. I remember from the very first days when the government didn't start herding the people like cattle into a prison pen. I came out with a statement that gained a colossal number of views and comments, where I firmly declared that the church should not be afraid of such things. Thank God that there are faithful people in the world. As a rule, the older brothers who spoke out against this concentration camp and demanded clarity on the reasons for such an astonishing, historical, brazen, impudent, lawless behavior of the authorities. We need to understand the times. A normal person knows when it's time to get up, time to eat, time to work, time to study, and time to rest. In a person's world, time plays a key role. It guides our actions. Time pushes and urges us to act. If we imagine that there is no day and night, there's no sleep and no waking time. There is no time, no clock, and we are not guided by anything. Some kind of time coordinates. A person would live in prostration, and they would never be able to accomplish anything. That's why the New Testament claims that time, this is the most important asset that you and I must redeem, purchase. We need to hurry, because life on this material, physical earth. Life, in which we live in the depths of evil, in the kingdom of Satan, in the kingdom of crooked mirrors. Our days are illusory, and at any moment we can be subjected to destruction, abstraction. That is annihilation. We might not have time to mature. We might not make it in time to get right with our Lord, to draw close to Him properly, at the maximum distance that a bride and groom, husband and wife, come together. How close should a Christian be? As close to God as husbands are to their wives, and modern pastors with their mistresses. Absolute closeness. Religious Christianity tells us that we are of this closeness, unworthy, that everything we do is just waving at God from a distance with some leaves, to stand forever singing some songs. Today, Christianity practices doing this in its concert halls for an hour and a half, trying to materialize the spiritual, or soulful, in fact, the fleshly even, wondering what exactly they will be doing with that. Eternity. Let's say safe travels, have a good journey. That's a mistake. A man and a woman dream of not singing songs to each other. They can sing until the wedding. A man and a woman feel love. To realize the strongest, most compelling feeling of love. The feeling of eternal attachment to each other. In deep, absolute, tender, and strong embraces of love. In bed. Giving birth to the fruit of love. A new life. That's why in the 15th chapter of the first letter to the Corinthians, the Lord says that the first Adam became a living soul, and it gives rise to a soulful, material, external life. But the last Adam, the second, but the last Adam, after which there will be no other Adam, no other beginning, there will be no new humanity. There is the old humanity, Adam in existence, and there is the new Adam. In the New Testament, Jesus Christ. And here is this new Adam. He has an amazing ability. He reproduces divine life. He reproduces the life-giving spirit, not just the soulful life. All of Christianity is mistaken. Cultivating a soulish, fleshly faith of the Old Testament, of God's people, Israel. This was the beginning of cultivating faith. Of a person, this was outer faith. Inner faith began with Jesus Christ. And the church should cultivate only inner faith. And the first commandment of Jesus Christ, as the true Moses, blessed are the poor in spirit, or blessed are those who experience a constant thirst for the Spirit. The young man, the rich young man, came to Christ precisely with this thirst, soulish and bodily. He followed all the necessary commandments, and Christ listed some of them for him. And he quickly, with a broken heart, drew the line and said, I have no problem with this. But there is a problem with some part of my being where there is emptiness. Christ fell in love with him because in reality, the people of Israel have matured for the new and final stage of completing faith in God's design. This stage will allow a person to merge completely with God in one spirit, because God is spirit, and God never intended for man to be an eternally soulish being. We are meant to be eternally spiritual beings in materialized bodies of a new kind. Today we have soulish bodies, bodies for the soul, bodies that respond to the needs and wants of the soul, bodies that find it very difficult to adjust to the needs and desires of the spirit. But soon, to everyone who deserves it, to everyone who has been inspired in their soul, to all who live by the Spirit, walk by the Spirit, and dwell in the Spirit, God will reward such faithful God's people as spiritual bodies that will always to respond to the needs of the Spirit. We're heading towards this along with the fact that the whole world has shown its global ability to be under the influence of fear in prison, in the prison of their own minds, rejecting all their rights for which nations have fought and shed blood. In the last 100 years, or centuries since the 3 French revolutions, then the concept of republic, democracy, and the rights of peoples emerged. Alongside this, the Church has shown how ready it is for a complete retreat from faith. Most of the so-called churches, pastors, and believers, out of fear for their flesh, they hid in their homes. They opened virtual churches. They practiced virtual communions, virtual gatherings, and saw that it was good. They also entered the neon paradise, Satan, and calmly dwelled in it quite safely. Satan is pleased with such a course of action. Thus, the Church, in 2020, it refused from the fear of God and accepted the fear of the world. Never in history has there been anything like this with the Church, because the Church has always remained persecuted in this world. Essentially, it never claimed that the satanic world in any way would represent rights and satisfy the interests of the Church on earth. We see that it started with Catholicism, where for 1,000 years Satan cunningly bound the Church. Pagan, Christian religion. Through Luther in the 15th century, God broke through and escaped from the chains of this colossal religious pagan darkness. And throughout, for the last 5 centuries, the Lord has again and again, step by step, He has been leading the Church out of this collapse into His glorious light. And so, as the Bible says, before the end of everything, when the Son of Darkness is to appear, materialization of Satan, the son of Satan, the Antichrist, the Church at this moment must be absolutely weak and utterly insignificant in its authority and influence in the world. The influence of the Church is always based on one single fact. It is the Holy Spirit in the regenerated spirit of believers. Today, All churches, without exception, are full of tares. People who are religious by nature. They like to associate themselves with some deity, with some religion, especially with the Mass, and some historically authoritative one. But these people are absolutely not born again, not born of water and spirit. They don't know God. They know something about God. Such people have Bibles. They know excerpts from them. They are not bad as people, but they are absolutely evil towards the life of God, to the tree of life, and they are ready to break it at any moment. In these gatherings, the tree of life does not grow. And this time, for the church is referred to in the book of Revelation about the Laodicean church. The time of absolute insignificance and weakness of the church, because the time has come for her to give birth. This is the church in the 9th month. In the 9th month, a woman, Ukrainian, is definitely unprotected. So she is unprotected, she is weak. The fruit is too big and takes up a lot of energy of her. This fruit of the Bible. Males are the winners. In the church, there are always winners. We are one step away from the realization of the book of Revelation, and there we will see what is in the call to the church over the past 2,000 years at all 7 stages of its growth. Despite all the persecutions and God's claims, to the weaknesses and downfalls of the church. At the end of each of the 7 churches, the Lord makes a call to the winners, that is, in the eyes of God. On one hand, in the initial stage, there is a prospect that the Lord will have a significant and decent number of faithful people. But the most difficult thing in the satanic world, to make it to the end, and the Bible tells us, through the Apostle Paul, that those who endure to the end will be saved. And Christ himself also speaks about this. So you have to endure everything. And the most difficult thing is that in a Christian's life, you have to endure this. Not persecution, it's the time. It's the time. It would be great if we were born again. Spent enough time for our growth and improvement. We would have been in church with you for about 7 years. And through this time, we would be taken by the Lord. As some dream to go to heaven. Although believers will never live in heaven, our life on the new earth, on which he will dwell, and God and the angels forever. Not in heaven. New Jerusalem in the book of Revelations descends from the new heaven to earth. Solemn entrance. God united with his faithful sons. With the serving staff, who are also God's sons, the angels. This majestic city will be the center of the new earth forever. God wants to live with people. God wants to live among people. God came to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and loved to walk in the cool of the garden. To walk in the cool of the Eden garden. Garden. Angels, they also envy us. We, materialized beings, and on the new earth, all the angels will also be manifested. and they will be very happy about it. We, in turn, need to become spiritual. Today we're doing this. So how would we like to reduce the time after our rebirth? But we need to understand this together. What I know, at best, are believers who lived in faith, starting from around 20 years old in faith. 70 years lived to 90 years. It seems like a very long time. When there is a church, it's a nice period, because the church is a family. The most difficult time in this length. It's a life of solitude, a life without the church. The most difficult thing for a Christian in whom God lives, who leads us to the building of God's body, to the church, but there is no church, or the church is ignoring you precisely because God is in you, is strongly manifested, He is incredibly influential, and you are a spiritual person. We see with you, this is the Laodicean church, the church of the last times, the end of everything. The last of the last times, the end of everything. When even Christ is not allowed in this church. This church is deprived of the tree of life, deprived of Christ. This is a self-satisfied, proud, brazen, sleeping, intoxicated church, basking in its past successes. God is rebuking her, is trying with all its might to reach her, through various faithful brothers and sisters who raise their voices. At the end of times, but the church drives away. Such people ignores them and considers them enemies of its peace. This is a church that lies in the embrace of the world. And she is a better lover of the world. The world, in the face of Satan, has provided her with an influential, base, soulish, carnal defense of rights. Her so-called shameless conscience. We are witnesses to this entire process. So let's get back to the spiritual hours of the time we are in together. The year 2020, beautiful numbers, 2020. The Lord is a great mathematician. All the numbers in the Bible carry symbolic weight. And here too, there is a beautiful symbolic weight. The number 20 in the Bible signifies perfect growth. It took Jacob 20 years to become Israel. It took Solomon 20 years to build the temple and palace. All these signs indeed, there are even more. All these signs indicate that the year 2020, that everything is in God's plan. Absolutely ripe. And has come to its conclusion. For many, the year 2020 became a surprise, an explosion, an unexpected event. Christianity taught lies, where no one knows the day or the hour, not even the Son of God. And this is the Son of God, pay attention, who said this before the ascension to his apostles. And then came the book of Revelation, where his revealed reign. This is an incredible solemn procedure for the crowning of the materialized God. Flawless, perfect. Who went through the courts, human courts, the court of Satan, and the judgment of God, the angelic judgment, and recognized by everyone as truly God in the flesh. Perfect, flawless, who lived a full life with us, but did not stay here for more years. Why didn't Christ stay longer? Because his goal was the Spirit. And our goal is always the flesh. We want to see physically, we want to touch physically. We want to smell physically. And God is reshaping us, the spiritual reality, where we can touch God really. We see God really in the Spirit, and we smell God in the Spirit. And when you are told that you have never seen God materially, you need to stop such people and say, I have seen. We have 5 senses of the body. They are all material. You can't see smell with your eyes. And sound. You can't smell with your nose. All the senses that we have correspond certain material manifestation in this material world. The Spirit is a universal substance that allows us to see the Spirit of God in all its fullness. How the apostles saw Christ and were amazed by Christ. At such an early age, in the development of their powers, he left them physically. After a while, they understood that this is not the inheritance that God brought to humanity. God brought his fullness. And in the materialization of Jesus Christ, God was limited until his resurrection. And in his resurrection, he simultaneously appeared to 500 people who were in different places. When these people agreed among themselves that at the same time, but in different places, the same Christ appeared to them all, it became open and clear to them, that's it, that God was in a hurry to Christ, to accomplish this for them, so that it wouldn't be them running thousands, as we saw, after Christ around the Sea of Gennesaret, and so that Christ would be accessible to you anywhere, at any time. Individually, personally, for you. It was not a substitute for Christ, not Gabriel, not Michael, but Christ himself, to each one. That's why Paul says that every believer in the letter to the Romans has their own Lord. Such a capability of the materialized God. It appeared precisely after the death of the grave and the resurrection. And in the resurrection, it's still the same Christ, but with different abilities and possibilities for us. He, first of all, is able to dwell internally in everyone who believes in him. And this is a complete God, personally, living life with a believer in order to be together with him, to extend this life eternally. What kind of relationship should we have with him? Such strong, solid, loving, so that we have no possibility of living without him. For this there is the book Song of Songs, which celebrates such a strong, powerful love, that a woman can neither sleep nor eat nor feel any peace. She is depressed. The beloved is gone. She is looking for him. She runs out into the street in her nightgown, searching for him. She doesn't think about herself. She doesn't think about the norms of propriety. She doesn't stand in front of the mirror. She doesn't wear makeup. She won't fix her hair. This is what Peter was talking about. Sisters, you shouldn't be like that. This is for physical husbands. You do all this strange cosmetic beauty. Where is your inner beauty? A man loves a woman otherwise. Christ all the more in our hearts, minds, and souls. In the year 2020, a colossal line was drawn. The symbolism of the year 2020, everything has ripened. In 6,000 years, all of humanity has matured. The whole world, the entire system of Satan. The whole system of Satan's government has reached its peak. Satan, he presented humanity with a perfect, in his view, neon, technological paradise. He even introduced the concepts of this paradise to humanity. A simulation in which a person can live many lives in a short time. A person in these simulations can be God. And if he is killed for any reason, he can calmly be reborn. For this, a person needs to pay with a truly healthy mind and real material time. The days are wicked, now more than ever, because the cunning deceiver Satan is at work, built for man an amazing, magical world. Lies in which it gives a person the opportunity to feel an infinitely invincible God who can do whatever he wants. Today, a person doesn't need to dream about earning money to buy a car or a house or to win someone's heart. Some girl, he just has to press one button. And there he is, already driving a super expensive Ferrari or Lamborghini. Bentley. He don't can press another button, and thousands of whores spread their legs before him on porn sites. He doesn't even need to sweat or strain today to get sexual satisfaction. For this, there are other slaves watching for whose satisfaction he is satisfied twice, because he doesn't exert himself physically, but only virtually and psychologically. Today, a person can do anything on the internet. He is already dreaming of accepting Satan's offer to shed his material body and move into the eternal one. Electronic, technological, at times magical, the virtual world of the internet. Humanity even has temporary steps. By the year 2049, a person must replace this physical body with a technological robotic body that won't die, transfer the neural connections, the brain of mindless earthlings, and in the end try to adapt the unique human, the human soul created by God, to digitize for a new digital reality. Simulation, soul, of souls from the human soulful world. And we can say that this is unrealistic, but nevertheless, there is already scientific evidence that a lot of this is indeed real. This is how important, brothers and sisters, the year 2020 is. We are in the year 2020. We have received a new humanity. Humanity has shifted. It has become different. People have changed, and the behavioral motives have changed. People are short of conditions aiding achievement. Certain circumstances that would help them to realize This incredible magical theory of a new reality, a new world order, where conscience will cease to exist, where there will be no borders and norms of behavioral freedom. Today, in computer games, by the way, both children and adults can freely and with impunity kill other people in crowds. There are terrible, bloody programs, games, simulations, where it's not just one person killing from a distance with a gun, thousands of other enemies. And where can you grab any object that happens to be at hand? A pen, a nail, a hammer, a shovel, and like the last complete sadist, and a serial killer. Destroy victims, including women and children. Moreover, by killing for a long time, there are games where you can take on the role, I repeat, of a sadist and a serial killer, and so on and so forth. So this is a question of the destruction of conscience, where you're not just watching some horror movie about a cynical scoundrel who is portrayed by the film industry as a hero who has his reasons. It turns out he had a bad childhood and a bad dad, of course. Notice, it's not the moms, they're always bad. For some reason, it's the dads. These are games where you are the main character. These games and modern movies have taught humanity to calmly accept death and its horrors. And her horrors. The war in Ukraine has proven this. People calmly accept death. I remember the Soviet times, where any kind of death would evoke horror in both children and adults. Today, thanks to the film industry and the computer game industry, a person's conscience is at ease. It's just a game, or it's just a movie. But when we play and when we watch movies, for us, it's not a game. This is the reality where we are always the main character. Such is the psychology. Neinstway. Up to the year 1922, humanity has gone through a break, it has transformed, and it has acquired a new psychology. All civilized humanity has acquired the skill of survival in a limited reality. There is a way out. It's virtual reality. Since then, the world has changed. Many people don't go to work but work remotely online. Many universities and even schools have made the transition as well. In online mode, it's extremely cost-effective. People don't travel by transport, don't waste energy. Don't waste time, don't waste energy. Indeed, a new digital era has arrived. The digital reality of all humanity. Something is missing. I'll talk about that a bit later. Since 2020, I have firmly started talking about 3 key historical years in which something will manifest. I have been asserting since 2020 that these will be the years 2022, 2024, and 2027. And we have already seen that out of the 3 dates, 2 have already come true. First, speaking of which, today at the beginning, about what God represents to Satan, the same historical tools and opportunities that he has. We see this from the Garden of Eden. 2 intermediaries, God and Satan, were in the Garden of Eden. God is not afraid of competition. And that's the point. Choice for beings with free will. Angels have free will, and so do humans. Free will allows for God to find those people who have chosen a relationship with Him voluntarily and consciously. Goodwill always gives us a choice in which we can see together one vector and the opposite. Exactly. These two opposites always trigger consciousness in a person. If there is only one side and we are unaware of the existence of the other, there's no awareness. Awareness works on objective reality. So we definitely need to see two opposite propositions, two competing vectors, two opposites. Then consciousness is objective. Then all options are calculated. Choice. Honest, complete and eternal. For us humans, the most important value, the asset, is time. On the other hand, time can work against us. Time works for us. When Christians lived for 19 centuries in unfavorable conditions, time works against us when believers are trapped in the satanic good system of the neon paradise. Rights and freedoms, the conscience of believers, and so on and so forth. All of this is a catastrophic deception. Because in exchange for such rights and freedoms, Satan demands restrictions on our faith and freedom. Of our faith, and Satan demands cooperation with his world and his neon paradise. Satan is exploiting the church's consent for privileges, exploits, by virtue of the fact that he is like an employer who hires you as his assistant or secretary, and in return demands betrayal in his office. Betrayal in his office. Don't you want to change? Sorry, we're not hiring you. You will be begging. You will have a very hard life. Christ is hated for a difficult life. We are meant to be with you to great happiness, without any difficulties or challenges, forever. But to not spoil eternity, we must have the character of God. Notice that God lives forever, and his character is unchanging. We must acquire his character not through our own efforts, but by having his character infused into our being, into our personality. We merge with his character. We reject our own character in order to, his character has become ours, so that God's nature becomes ours. This is the only condition for us to be happy with God for all eternity. In unchangeability. That is, being faithful to him in love. This is only possible if God endows us with his nature. That's exactly what he did in his death and resurrection. That's essence. The Gospels, God materialized, became one of us. A human to take us by the hand, and through the cross to lead us through death, where our old self will die along with sin, and then to bring us into the spirit of resurrection, in which God is by giving us his own life, and nature to endow us, humans, with himself, God, to make us completely gods, in essence, in character, in life experience. Only this is the eternal condition of our faithful unchangeability, and a deep love for God because we share the same nature with him. We love what God loves. We hate what God hates. We are one with God completely, and we do not need to be forced to be like that. The law of the Spirit of life means the law of divine nature. Today we have human nature. Sinners have a fallen human nature. We have God's human nature. And God has a human nature because he materialized as a man. Today we are drawing closer to him. One day he came to us, a ladder from heaven, and we are ascending this ladder to God, to merge with him into one nature. This is the process. 20 years, which is shown in the Bible as a sufficient time for a Christian to become perfect in God. In the 22nd year, it appears, doesn't just appear, but reveals himself, reveals his wicked nature. The most important character in the Bible is Gog. As of today, this character has an unveiled individuality. For me, he was revealed earlier. This is Putin, the prince of Ros, Meshech, and Tubal. The proud prince, the prince of Magog, of a proud people. Who is Gog? This is the forerunner of the Antichrist. In the materialization of God, Jesus Christ was a forerunner. Him, or if you prefer, the manager, the marketer who introduced him to the world. He was walking ahead of Christ and was the herald who proclaimed, humanity is moving towards the bridegroom. He who wants to goes with you in a loving relationship. Here comes the one who did not come to judge you, but the one who has come to love you is coming. Come out to meet him. There will definitely be those who will fall in love with him in return, and those who do not fall in love. For you, a hatchet is prepared, because you are the weeds. And soon the time is coming. It will be a great sorrow when all the weeds are cut down. For the Jews, this sorrow, as it is well known, came in 70 AD. The vineyard of the Jews was cut down. However, in 1948, as the Lord had foretold through his prophets, the Lord has not forgotten his earthly people, and they began to be restored, giving new young shoots. This will happen before the Lord's return. Today, we stand with you. In the deep spring, where is the fig tree? The people of Israel has put forth leaves and is just one step away from bearing the fruit of the figgy. Today, we stand with you on the threshold of the last 7 years and 77 years. Okay. Presented in the book of Daniel for God's people, all these 77 years, okay? Very important milestones for the people of Israel in their relationship with God. The last 7 years did not take place because there was an insertion between the 69th and 70th weeks. This is the time of the church. God is a great mathematician. He has his own calendar. Therefore, it was impossible to calculate all these elements and moments earlier, and we, living at the end of time, we can already see and know absolutely everything, including the time and even the year of our Lord's return. But we can't know the day and hour just yet. But when the last 7 years begin, we will even be able to know the day and hour, because the clear report of the 7 years will begin at the moment when a treaty will be made between Israel and the best good friend of Israel, the materialization of Satan, the Antichrist. That's what the Bible says. From this moment, from the day the treaty is signed, exactly 7 years will pass, according to the lunar calendar. Not 365, but 360 days multiplied by 7. This is what is presented to us in the book of Revelation, because the moon represents Israel, while the sun represents the church. That's why the church lives by the solar calendar, while Israel still follows the lunar one. And even the book of Revelation presents to us the last 7 years and the Great Tribulation. 3.5 years, 42 months, 1260 days of the lunar calendar, the time of Israel. This suggests that it is church time, has completely come to an end, and now I will operate based on science and all the circumstances that exist in the world. But now, let's talk about Gog. The 22nd year, the time of the manifestation of the forerunner of the Antichrist, Gog. I already told you that in God's plan, which is wonderfully supernatural, beyond the reach of an ordinary person, only to God's prophets, the special chosen people of God, does he entrust his plan. And we see in the Old Testament whole 2 prophets. They consumed God's scrolls, meaning they internalized God's plan to present it to God's people. And in the New Testament, in the book of Revelation, Apostle John, also following the example of the Old Testament prophets, used God's scroll, which is the fullness of God's plan. Why are there 2 prophets in the Old Testament? Used edible scrolls. Because the Old Testament consists of the law and the prophets, which are 2 parts. And the New Testament consists of 1 part. In the end, we see that throughout the entire Bible, 3 prophets of God. They consumed and internalized 3 of God's scrolls. So Gog has 3 steps in the fulfillment of the divine plan. And just as John the Baptist was the best man, the friend of the bridegroom, who went ahead of him and introduced Christ to humanity, just like the Antichrist has his matchmaker, who will also, in his own wicked and satanic way, introduce the Antichrist to humanity. The Antichrist has a forerunner, just like Christ had John the Baptist as his forerunner. That is, those who preceded the coming of Christ helped Christ. The coming of Christ helped Christ to become famous. He introduced Christ to humanity, and likewise, the Antichrist will be introduced to humanity through Gog. Christ, teachers, Christians in the church are divided into 2 parts. Some believe that Gog is the Antichrist, while others believe that this is not the Antichrist. Gog is not the Antichrist. The book of Ezekiel and the book of Joel, and in other books of other prophets, is mentioned in a special way about this character. In a special way. And the details that God introduces about Gog do not match the details that God introduces about the Antichrist. Supernatural works of God are carried out by God. Natural for us. We with you. Sober. But Christianity, it is unreasonable as it is childish. Kids are always obsessed with miracles. When children are told something, for example, that they will receive some expensive gift, children don't know where presents come from and believe in Grandfather Frost's, Santa Clauses, some fairies, in some magical witch-like characters. Children don't understand that all gifts are taken from the hard work of their parents. Childhood is a magical time of ownership. For them, everything is easy, simple, and nothing is impossible. But when children grow up, they suddenly realize that Santa Claus is just a dad who works hard at his job. And the fairy is a mom who works either at her job or at home. And they come to a real state of understanding that study, work, and creation, those supernatural moments that seem simple and magical to children. I'll repeat, the entire plan of God is supernatural, but God carries it out through natural processes. Therefore, certain global prerequisites are necessary for the Antichrist to appear. The world must mature, and the year 2020 showed that the whole world has matured. The rulers have matured in the most civilized legal countries, so that they have levers, psychological influence on their people through fear, even unsubstantiated fear. They have accustomed their people to an incredible comfort of temporary, earthly, soulful life. And for the sake of this temporary, earthly, soulful life, people are willing to pay any price for freedom. And that's exactly what happened in 2020. Freedom has ceased to be the most valuable asset in the world, and freedom of speech stopped. The main regulator of a person's absolute freedom from lies and governments. There is no freedom of speech. There is no freedom. There is no freedom of choice. There is only one path that everyone follows. Those who do not follow this path will either suffer or be destroyed. We, I repeat, saw this in 2020. In 2022, Gog has appeared to the world. He revealed his face. This is that freak, which has no analogues in modern history. Hitler, he had the right hand of Goebbels, the person who invented modern propaganda. Propaganda is not a new thing. It has been used for 1,000 years. All the emperors who present the people with one single choice. All emperors, from Nebuchadnezzar or even Nimrod to Babylon, to the last, today's modern emperors, present to the people one choice. Themselves like gods who can do anything. If you follow opinion, if we follow the opinion of these pseudo-emperors, then the people will be in prosperity. Today this is happening in China. In Russia, today these emperors are waking up in Europe. In America today, a similar emperor has come to power. Humanity thinks that it will enter some transitional phase of a new world. In fact, the 21st century has shown that humanity will never escape the historical cycle of endless repetitions of its own downfall. No matter what technologies we have. A knife, after all, a regular metal knife, will still shed blood for humanity. So, Putin is the ruler of Russia. In modern history, he is a legendary cosmic liar. This is a person who has a very special, talented ability. Turn the truth and to present the lie as the truth. He does this so skillfully and effortlessly that, I repeat, in modern history, in the last 100 years, there hasn't been a person like this, not even in Hitler's Germany. This is such an unprincipled being, cynical, atheistic, counting on that he will live forever, counting on medicines, technologies, mushrooms, various collections, herbs, the release of deer blood, children's, in the end, blood and other various magical rituals, shamans, Satanists, occultists, whoever this guy has at his service. Here it is. Orthodox Islam fights for him. He's on his side. We see this extraordinary. A sick person who, at a time when the whole world is blissfully enjoying a peaceful, comfortable, and illusory life, he is waging a bloody war on par with World War II. Attacking peaceful neighboring country of Ukraine, wanting to completely exterminate this people, which stands as a thorn in its side, preventing it from carrying out its most wicked intentions towards Europe and the rest of the civilized world. This is a government of destruction, and it is a whole people of destruction. Every of an imperial people, in whose history there have been imperial ambitions. There is definitely some kind of symbol that represents this people. For Russia, it's the bear. And this character, the legs of the bear, are in a composite. Terrifying, ugly beast, which will be ruled by the Antichrist. And there are the paws of the bear, the style of warfare. Throughout its history, especially in the 17th century, Russia has been known as a nation of destruction and annihilation. Is that this group of people has gained a reputation as a nation of destruction, a destroyer. He doesn't know how to fight. Thus, just as Alexander fought the Macedonian way of wisdom, cunning, and maneuverability, incredible technologies, or how the Roman Empire fought. These were empires that devised military strategies and military tactics. The only strategy and tactic the people of Magog are about the destruction and annihilation of any signs of civilization. This is an amazing people. Arrogance. This is a collection of nations. There are many peoples living in Russia. It is a multinational country. Russia is not an Orthodox country. It has more than 2,000 mosques. That's more than Orthodox churches, if I'm not mistaken. So, Gundyaev, as the ruler of the Orthodox sect, he tries to build as many Orthodox shrines as possible to surpass that number, because the country presents itself as Orthodox, but in reality, it is Muslim. Moreover, it is a Buddhist country. It is a pagan country. there lives a mix of those peoples who are considered the worst in human history. These are unbridled, uneducated, people's destroyers who live together peacefully. Well, they are extremely different, but they live together peacefully thanks to one common trait. These are slave peoples. All the peoples of Russia are slave peoples. They like being slaves. And the second feature is the peoples, who love one ruler, and they don't care that all the rulers of these peoples have always led them to slaughter, to death, and even more so if they don't care about their own lives. So they care even less about the lives of other peoples. This is an accurate description. The peoples of Russia, Goga, the land of the arrogant, God, thousands of years ago, gave a description and details through the prophet Ezekiel. I've gone over this multiple times. From Isaiah 38, 39. Listen again in the year 24. I was sorting it out. 2 chapters of the book of Ezekiel and the book of Jael, which proves that war, Gog and war, the war of the Antichrist against Israel is 2 different wars. That the war of Gog and the battle of Armageddon are 2 different wars that will take place in different valleys, and they will have different outcomes. Gog is a direct character. This is Vladimir Putin, the ruler of Russia. An arrogant man. There is a proud man. Alexander the Great was proud. Nebuchadnezzar was proud. But Putin is arrogant, and Russia is an arrogant country. How is this expressed? The characteristics of this nation's DNA are that they have not contributed, pay attention, to world civilization. They haven't contributed anything at all. Everything that they attribute as their own stolen. All the achievements that exist in the Russian people are achievements of other peoples, temporarily enslaved or simply achievements. Other peoples temporarily enslaved or simply the people of Russia stole from all nations the achievements of other peoples. They attribute balalaikas, valenki, fur coats, hats, ushankas to themselves, but all of this was stolen from Asian peoples, the Chinese, Mongols, and other nations. Accordions are also stolen from other nations when they talk about the greats. Writers, poets, we need to understand that these great writers and poets had no connection to Russia at all. They were all foreigners, every single one of them. All the people you know as the great poets and prose writers of Russia were foreigners. And Dali and Turgenevs and Pushkins and Dostoevskys were not there. They had no connection to Russia. They were foreigners. These are historical facts. This nation steals all the valuable things from other nations. Today, the nation that is a thief is China. China has its own history. They invented something. And when China is credited with the invention of gunpowder and toilet paper and other things, we need to know that alongside China, it turns out these inventions existed in other nations as well. For example, the Ukrainian Cossacks also had their own gunpowder, which they didn't produce from saltpeter, coal, or anything else. No, from this hemp. And this gunpowder is much more effective. Gunpowder, which was invented by the Chinese. Well, and so on. The Chinese have such advanced medicine, but all of it was based on inhuman sufferings and deaths that pagan China lived for millennia. After all, today's modern China, atheistic and not believing in God, stole all the achievements, civilizational ones in the world, and on this he built his Chinese economic and military empire. Russia, clumsy and can't even steal properly, so it's extremely important for Russia not just to steal something, but to have those who will properly reproduce what has been stolen. That's why we see that the best in Russia has always been built by Italians. The Germans and the Dutch were re-educating the people. Foreigners educated the people, all. Foreigners built everything. Tell me Russia couldn't build itself, because in the DNA of the people, there's nothing but destruction. The people can't be taught anything. It can't be done. The great Lomonosov of Russia, for example, is a catastrophic scientific fake. A man who never produced anything scientific, never proposed anything advanced, was simply a deception of the Russian Empire for the whole world, and so on and so forth. All space flights were carried out thanks to a nation like the Ukrainians. Aircraft construction, Ukrainians, and so on and so forth. Russia was built by foreigners, but Russia has the ability to do everything for itself. To appropriate, it has deceived the whole world. The whole world quietly agreed. Yes, you stole from us. Yes, this is ours. Well, let it be yours. This nation is arrogant precisely because, having nothing of its own, having stolen from others, it boasts over those. It has the ability to boast over others. Having produced nothing and having stolen from others. Well, that's quite an astonishing ability. So, as I have claimed before, I still assert it. Russia, in the selection of peoples, is the worst nation on earth. It combines all that is base and all that is worst. The beast, which is presented to us as a remarkable mutant, combines several animals, the body of a leopard, the legs of a bear, the jaws of a lion, and monster, heads, dragon, this beast. We see the most base part of it is the legs of a bear. This is Russia. Today, Russia is whole. It will be destroyed in the next 3 years. The reason for its destruction will be a military campaign against Israel, together with a group of the same destroyers, allies and friends of Russia. In Russia's friends, only the nations of destroyers, the nations terrorists. Because that's how it turned out. Why did it turn out this way? Because over 6,000 years God has created many nations. And through peace and war, there has always been a selection, that is, a purification of nations, so that contrasting nations emerged among the peoples, the best and the worst. Why does God need the worst nations? Because there will be the last time of divine vengeance. God allowed Satan to raise the worst nations on earth, so that during the Great Tribulation, this is a time of colossal divine vengeance against Satan and his minions, so that Satan has these expressed elements: his hatred, his evil, his lawlessness, and all the death that he brings. It's like the evidence presented in court, the weapon with which the criminal killed living people. These worst nations are the evidence. At the divine judgment, during the Great Tribulation, during his vengeance, where is God with a pure conscience will destroy these worst nations, which, pay attention, during this supernatural time, the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, will be openly to oppose God who will also be openly revealed to this world through angels that there are no such things as aliens, and what really exists is God and angels. And angels exist and have not become outdated. That's why in the book of Ezekiel it says that he will be the leader who will lead the nations of Magog and other nations that will join him. And today we see these nations from North Korea, Iran. Historically, we have been witnesses in these 1.5 months since Russia signed the strategic treaty with North Korea, with elements of mutual military protection, each other, and we see how the people of North Korea started fighting on the side of Russia against Ukraine. A similar strategic treaty was signed before the inauguration with Trump. Trump on January 20th, on January 17th, an agreement was signed with Iran, which is presented to us in the book of Ezekiel as Russia's main ally in the war against Israel. When Gog embarks on this military mission, Turkey is also an enemy of Israel and Russia's best friend, currently playing a double game, taking advantage from the western side and from the eastern, but in the end, Turkey will side with Russia. And there are all the prerequisites for this. And now we will break them down together. This is Syria, Turkey's interests, and so on. And together they will go to war against Israel. This entire colossal coalition will also include Libya. The Houthis will join here. Various terrorist organizations will join in, Hamas and Hezbollah, which are today almost destroyed by Israel, the Palestinians, and so on. They might even join in here. Surprisingly, but Germany, and we know that after the Holocaust during World War II, Germany seems to have changed, but we also know that the mood in Germany has shifted significantly, and today far-right organizations are fighting to gain power, which are hateful towards Israel, and neo-Nazism in Germany has been thriving for a long time. For decades, it is not banned in Germany. To fight against any nation, let's say against Ukraine. For a country to start fighting against a nation like Ukraine, it is certainly, without a doubt, challenging and complex. Strong arguments are needed. But when it comes to fighting against Israel, no arguments are needed. All the nations of the world hate Israel to one degree or another. There are very few peoples on earth who not just loyal, but also have a positive attitude towards Israel. There is one nation on earth called Christians who truly love the Israeli people. But Catholics are not included among Christians, as they sincerely hate the Israeli people. It is for this reason that the major Catholic countries of Europe, such as Italy, France, and Spain, will fight against Israel on the side of the Antichrist. So, the year 20 has shown us that the time of the church has ended. It has fully matured, and the fullness of the Gentiles has entered the house of God's salvation. 20. And the nations have matured. The whole world has matured to draw a line and bring in the best nations to establish the 1,000-year kingdom and eternity. As for the worst nations, they must perish during the Great Tribulation and ultimately be destroyed at the end of the 1,000-year kingdom. The so-called coarse filter, rough purification, and fine purification. In 1922, Gog, the forerunner, was revealed to the world. Before the Antichrist, his actions must bring a young politician of the new generation into the political orbit of degeneration. Of the new generation, new and latest generation, which will lead the new world order This is Gog's function. Ukraine is just a warm-up for Gog. The Bible says that he will be with Ukraine deployed through military methods. It is said that God against Gog, because the character of Gog is God who opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. That's why Ukraine hasn't been conquered by the second army in the world for 3 years. And the whole world was horrified and amazed that the so-called second army in the world actually once existed in the Soviet Union. But it doesn't exist in Russia. Today, the second army in the world is the Ukrainian army, which is the strongest army in the world after the United States. Being several times smaller, the people of Russia, being a demilitarized country, a peaceful people, the Ukrainian people, boldly and heroically fights against the disgusting, vile monster. The reason for all this, a destructive people, always destroys itself. The colossal corruption and the characteristics of the Russian people are such that they do everything half-heartedly, any old way. And we know that all products from Russia are the worst in the world. The Chinese have learned to make quality products, although it depends on where and in what way they are once again being cunning and deceiving the world. But still, they try, they learn, they manage to copy. Russians can't manage anything. They can only manage to steal toilets. And this is also an indicator of how unchanging this people is. How much is he stimulates medieval, how much it hasn't progressed. Stages of civilization. It has remained in selection and perfection, and it stays within itself in its DNA. A people that, well, they go to the bathroom in the woods and wipe themselves with leaves. So, if this is necessary, that is, well, those cursed African nations, here is the people of Russia, grew into such a monster. A curse that is a curse for the whole world. So for 3 centuries, Russia has been tormenting with their strange outbursts and their thirst for destruction of the whole world. Such is the fate of the people. A thirst for the destruction of the whole world. Such is the fate of the people. The paw of a bear. And today this bear is still whole, exists. He decided to scare the whole world. And the world was indeed scared before 2022. Revanchist. Russia's attacks Russia. With Putin, they decided to restore the Soviet Union, to bring everything back to where it was. To stand up against the West again in the role of, let's present such a balancing act to the world. Choice. Another form of existence and development or underdevelopment. In the end, all of this has escalated into open hot aggression against Ukraine, revealing that Russia is a country that is broken from within. Corruption is so strong that, and the remodernized Russian army turned out to be a fake. The army has been plundered over these 2 decades of Gog's rule, Putin. The same thing happened in China. China, during Russia's aggression against Ukraine, decided to attack Taiwan, and would have already attacked the previous administration of the United States. The great global gendarme, the United States of America, under Obama and Biden, completely weakened their grip. And America has become a mockery to countries like China, Russia, Iran, and others. Of such small terrorist nations, destroyers. America has lost its authority and influence. has been talking a lot and doing nothing. And in the end, thus China decided to attack Taiwan. But there was one setback. When the troops were prepared for military action, it turned out that military corruption in China had reached such a level that thousands of missiles were filled not with rocket fuel, but with water. So they just stole it. Fuel and colossal amounts of money, and the water destroyed the missiles. They had to redo them from scratch, and so China postponed its aggression against Taiwan. The same thing happened in Russia. The book from Akil says that Russia will be turned into iron. Hooks, which will be placed in its jaw or in its nose. In different translations, it doesn't matter. And that God is against Gog. And in the first case, he will turn him around. In the second, he will drag him. He won't want to go, but he will pull him along, dragging him. Gogi. And in the first case, he will turn him around. In the second, he will drag him. He won't want to go, but he will pull him along, dragging him. The question is from where and to where. Where is it said to Israel, but where from? This, of course, is also from the Western vector. Today, all aggression. Russia has concentrated all its weight in the West. Russia wants to absorb Europe. Russia wants to take away all the civilizational heritage that Europe has. Russia wants to take the slaves hostage today. All of Europe and take advantage of its achievements without doing anything. As always, the self-serving table. By the Pike's command. That is everything. Russian fairy tales are aimed at having everything without doing anything. Vanka the fool wants to marry the Tsar's daughter, getting the whole kingdom as a bonus. But corruption has eaten away at the military machine from the inside. They couldn't conquer Ukraine, and they won't be able to. Yes, Ukraine, it suffered terribly. But nevertheless, God says that he is against the arrogant, he opposes the proud. He hates Gog, and Gog will be destroyed, because Gog has led whole world order into a dead end. After World War II, this international order lasted for 80 years. It is completely destroyed. And no one has proposed a new world order. The actions of Gog will destroy the old world order so that a new world order can come. He is the mediator who prepared the ground for the Antichrist, who will present a new world order to the world. We are also in historical reality that Israel, for the first time in 80 years of its independence, it is in such a long-term war. For a year and a half now, Israel has been waging a fierce war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen. And today, it continues to wage war in the West Bank, in Israel, destroying all terrorist organizations that are being cut. Military weapons from Russia. Year 22 of Gog. It shows itself. He is not just someone who intimidates. He is someone who fights, destroys, and annihilates. And he has clear, specific goals. He wants to conquer the West and bring the Soviet Union back with new strength in modern realities and technologies. The Lord says, no, I will not give you that opportunity. You won't want to, but I will drag you along. The iron hooks with which the Lord will turn this monster bear are the united forces. And we see that it is only the United States and NATO. So, these iron hooks are still here today. The one who came to power, the one in America who wants to take advantage of the power of America And the strength of America is its economy, and it is its military machine. And the United States will use these iron hooks today to turn this monster away from the Western vector. And it is said that Gog will be at a dead end. Because of his pride and arrogance, he won't be able to accept defeat. He will have to find a way out, an excuse for this defeat. And here a wicked thought will come to him. Wicked, because his thought will be set against the earthly people of God. And this is all part of God's plan. God uses these most terrible nations in various ways to produce the best impact on God's people, both the church and Israel. We come to you, to the time of Israel. In recent weeks, Israel, a completely aesthetic state, today has about 400,000 people. These people in black suits who present themselves as Orthodox Jews are in fact just a sect of Kabbalists who have nothing to do with real Jewish priests and have nothing to do with Jewish believers. This is a disgusting, lying, dirty cult that does not believe in the Old Testament, that doesn't even believe in the Creator, God, and that engages in esotericism, pagan occultism, essentially outright Satanism. We know that there are pseudo-Christian religions, like Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, that have taken our Bible, Christian church, God's, and exploit it for their sectarian, deceitful purposes. The same goes for the Kabbalists, these Orthodox Jews. There are about 400,000 of them in Israel. These are dependents. The state of Israel pays them endless money so that they do nothing. And all they are indeed in their very core essence is truly religious liars, sectarians, and absolutely nothing more. Pagans, essentially. Their teachings are based on all sorts of Babylonian tales. These are people who exploit the Old Testament in part, but do not believe in it at all. That's why they have additional books, various Talmuds, books from various, their own teachers, Kabbalists, and so on and so forth. These are people who practice magic, witchcraft, and all other horrors, satanic whispers. You might think they are nice, lovely, God-fearing people, but that's a lie and a falsehood. In Israel, there are true believing Jews. They are the true remnant of God. These are people who stand on the Old Testament. They stand on the Old Testament covenant. People who pray for the third temple and for the return of the Messiah. The Messiah presented by the Kabbalists, by the Orthodox Kabbalists, those strange, eccentric people in black suits, like undertakers. This Messiah, the exact copy described in the New Testament, is the Antichrist. Exactly the same Messiah exists in Islam, one-to-one. So thanks to them, these people, so to the Kabbalists, the Antichrist who will be brought out of the shadows by Gog. Gog, who destroyed the old world order. He will pass the baton of initiative to a young, talented, powerful, and influential person whose mind is unmatched by anyone in the world. The Antichrist, a politician, a scholar, a serious young man who must be around 27 years old. I'll explain why later. In the book of Revelation, and we will see this young man with you until 1929, I think he will reveal himself starting in 1927. Since in 1927 Putin Gog is supposed to go into military intervention with his allies, which we mentioned in part. In the Bible there is a complete listing, but the main thing is Iran, Turkey, Palestinians, the Caucasus. The Caucasus for us includes both Chechnya and Azerbaijan, Muslim, and Turkey, of course. And even Germany, in an amazing way, that is, this entire coalition, along with other nations, will head to Israel. Before that, from Ezekiel, it says, prepare for this war and arm yourself. Right before the war, I gave 2 sermons about Gog and didn't have time to give the third one. And then I didn't understand why it is described to us that Gog is going to Israel in such a brilliant military formation with shining shields. I mean, it's an absolutely new, beautiful army. Then I realized that Russia will not tolerate a devastating blow in Ukraine. But the opposite happened. Russia today has essentially lost all of its military potential in Ukraine, completely, and it is rearming today from 42 to 60% of the Russian GDP. It's just enormous. Billions of dollars are being spent on rearming Russia thanks to the war in Ukraine. Russia today will literally get all new tanks, new planes, new armored vehicles, new artillery, all new. Moreover, Turkey has a colossal new army with completely new technologies and armaments. Iran has a brilliant army with new armaments. Well, Germany has one too. And that's why this entire coalition will shine. All the armaments will not only be new, but they will also be summed up, collective. And what the prophets Joel and Ezekiel saw is just something incredible. Such military beauty of military technologies overall. And the Lord said to Russia in the book of Ezekiel, arm yourself. Because Russia lost all its existing armaments in the war with Ukraine, it is now rearming. Everything is going exactly according to the Bible. I repeat, Gog is the forerunner of the Antichrist. He doesn't come and shout, the bridegroom is coming. He doesn't come and shout, the Antichrist is coming, worship him. No. The meaning of Gog from the perspective of the world is to destroy the old world order and prepare the world to accept the new world order. And all the people in the world are waiting for one powerful leader who will offer a new model to the world of this world order. And this will be the Antichrist, a politician of the new generation, modern, progressive, and also a scholar. A genius, Einstein, so to speak, of his time. And a powerful politician. I think he will be a handsome, attractive young man. The whole world will be in captivity. Finally, the old-timers will fade away. New people have arrived. You see that the old generation of politicians are clinging to the old world order. And in Europe, young politicians are coming in now. And they are for the new world order, to completely rethink everything. We need to live in a new way. The old order is no good. So everything that is said in the book of Zechariah about her or in other prophets regarding Gog, everything is coming true right before our eyes. Now, for everything has come to pass that is described in the Bible regarding Gog. A counterbalance to Gog must come. Someone has to break him. First of all, someone has to turn him away from the Western vector and direct him towards Israel. The 24th, a year, as I said, 22, 24, 27, in the year 24, Trump, in an incredible way, all the experts, politicians, and forecasters said that Trump would never return for a second term. He returns triumphantly for a second term with a colossal victory over the opposing Democratic Party And still a month and a half before the inauguration, that is, before taking on his presidential duties. He's just turning the entire political world upside down. In the world, knowing about his election campaign, rhetoric, knowing about his campaign promises, the whole world knows one thing. Trump will fulfill all his promises, and he will fulfill them strictly. He came for one term. He's very angry. He was deceived, set up, had his previous victory stolen from him, and so on. I told you in 2020, this man is extraordinary. He is unlike any politician. He is the one who needs to come to power because the world has to change. The world needs to break down. Radical people are needed for this. Gog has come to break the world. And Trump has come to break the world old so that the new can arise. Trump has an isolationist policy. Everything for America, to hell with the rest of the world. We talked about how the Gokis should go to war against Israel, which is being defended by America. America needs to weaken. There are reasons for this, and only now they are revealed. They couldn't be seen earlier, only now. So Trump is clearly insisting that Russia should stop fighting against Ukraine. Putin can't do that because he wants to conquer all of Ukraine, to bring all of Europe to its knees. He is failing at both. And then Trump comes in saying, stop it because I will take very tough action against you if you continue to fight. Putin is now at a dead end. The so-called Zugzwang almost worked. So he can't continue fighting, and he can't not fight. If he stops fighting, the people of Russia are currently in deep poverty. For 20 years of his rule, Putin and his team of like-minded people simply robbed the people. And the 3-year war stole from the people of Russia all the last crumbs and pennies with which they somehow existed. Right now in Russia, there is simply a colossal economic crisis and a comfortable collapse. The people are very evil, and the people of Russia don't know how to change the government in a good way. Power. In a good way. History says that the people of Russia only change power through the killing of the Tsar in a rebellion, and the people's rebellion is always very terrifying. He doesn't listen to any reasonable words. Today, Russia finds itself in this position. Putin doesn't care about the well-being of his people. He is an emperor, he is proud, he must conquer, he doesn't care about his own people. So, he can't backtrack, according to his wicked inner self. He's that vampire who has drunk all the blood. He won't be able to drink tomato juice anymore. Ezekiel says that he will be at a dead end. No matter what he does, he will be at a loss. He needs a way out, and a wicked thought will come to him. I'll repeat, a wicked thought. He needs to change direction. I'll tell you that all the prerequisites have already been fulfilled. Since the Tsarist Empire, Russia had an interest in the Middle East. Of course, it's Jerusalem. Moscow once proclaimed itself the Third Rome. First Rome was in Rome, the second Rome was in Byzantium, and the third Rome. This is Moscow. And this whole foolish nation boasts that they have a special mission. Indeed, the Bible says that Russia has a triple mission. The first mission is Gog. The second mission is the Antichrist. And the third mission at the end of the 1,000-year reign is that this people, the inhabitants of Magog, will once again gather in rebellion against Christ, God, physically and materially. For 1,000 years on earth with his two peoples, the Christians and the Jews. Can you imagine how disgusting this nation is? Destroyers and annihilators. If you have come to Christ, that's the only way to be saved, for God to change your DNA. From destroyers to creators. There is no other nation on earth like Russia, even China, which is presented in the book Revelation to the Nations. From the rising sun, even China is developing, becoming civilized, even though it steals, but really, it produces something that makes the whole world gasp. Listen on. We have a little time left, so pay attention. In 1924, a new leader comes to power. The new leader of the United States of America. The whole world is turning upside down. Even Putin and Russia are turning upside down. Everyone is in horror and fear. A person comes with authoritarian views, possessing, with all the money in the world and the military power in the world, that no one else has more except for the United States. China has a large army, but they have never fought. Russia has a small army, and it's not just fighting, but losing in Ukraine. The second largest army in the world has been unable to conquer demilitarized Ukraine for 3 years. Tsarist Russia has always been present in the Middle East to show that it is the third Rome. Tsarist Russia bought up and acquired quite a bit of land in Jerusalem, and there a well-established Orthodox nobility took root. And this Orthodox nobility corrupts the Israeli state. To this day, Russia is a direct enemy of Israel, but it hides its true intentions and plays a double game. Israel plays a double game as well, and is hypocritical. Israel is hypocritical as well. He's small and he doesn't want to be open. Declare confrontation against Russia. Russia supplies and supports all terrorist nations. Enemies of Israel. It's Russia that does this. It's been doing this since the Soviet Union. And it has been doing this since the times of the Soviet Union. Tsarist Russia had a base in the Mediterranean Sea, specifically in Syria. The Soviet Union continued to have it, and Russia has continued to have it. And here comes the miracle. Israel went to war against its enemies on October 7, 1923. Against the enemies of Israel, against all terrorist organizations, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Yemeni Houthis, Iran. For the first time in history, there has been a military clash between Iran and Israel, twice already. They bombed each other. Before, only Israel did this in relation to Iran. But Iran has never carried out any military actions directly against Israel. And here Iran directly fired missiles at Israel twice. Listen further, it's very interesting. So, Israel has been quite successful in largely eliminating the foundation of all the terrorist organizations that surround it on all sides. From the south, from the west, from the east. Some terrorists today have mostly been destroyed by Israel, mostly disarmed. The remnants of these organizations remain. Trump ordered Israel, under the leadership of Netanyahu, to stop this war. Thank you. This war. Naturally, Israel didn't want to stop because the enemy needs to be finished off otherwise. In 10 years, it will regain strength and go to war again. Especially since the technological world has changed, the Ukrainians have changed the technology of war. In 3 years, the Ukrainians have presented the world with incredibly cheap, incredibly effective drone technologies that effectively destroy and dismantle the most expensive, the most protected military systems in the world that were in service with Russia. Drones destroy all armored vehicles, super tanks, aircraft, and incredibly expensive, huge, powerful, threatening, intimidating submarines and naval ships. There has never been an army in the world that possessed such technologies. The Ukrainians created them on their knees during the war. And not by way. This The army or the government didn't create these weapons. These are ordinary people. Came up with. So, my brother and I, we are specialists in the field of intellectual property. We have a lot of knowledge, but only about 15%, as we were informed. That in our country, ordinary people came up with it. New weapon systems. During this war, they are being patented right now, and the whole world, especially the American military, is very eager to acquire these technologies for themselves. The Bible tells us that Gog will be unleashed. Who should be stronger than Gog? It's Trump. He's a radical, despotic man who wants to go down in history at the end of his life and restore America's former glory. We see what the United States of America, as I already told you, according to the book of Revelation, will be the country that will be accepted during the Great Tribulation. The church on its territory will provide it for years and protect its own territory. For this, America must first of all become Christian again, not gay. The first decree that Trump passed was that there is no more in the United States of America genders, except for two, male and female. And in 4 years he will put things in order. The moral system in America is again under a common denominator of normal human conscience and Christian faith. Second, the second priority for Trump is Israel. When Israel destroyed all the proxies, Iran's groups, all terrorist organizations, Iran is afraid that Israel will take on the nuclear development of Iran's nuclear weapons. In 1980, the Iranians built a system for enriching uranium to produce military plutonium. Uranium for military plutonium. Israel completely destroyed this nuclear power plant with deep penetration bunker bombs. There was a large release of radiation and so on and so forth. The Biden administration did not provide Israel with such weapons. Heavy, 900-kilogram, bunker-busting bombs, fearing that Israel would decide to bomb nuclear facilities. One of Trump's first executive orders to give Israel all the necessary weapons, whatever they ask for, including bunker-busting bombs, 900-kilogram bombs that Israel is capable of using today to destroy Iran's nuclear program, to destroy the nuclear program of Iran, which is being carried out with full support from Russia, just like in North Korea. Listen further. For the first time in history, Rama, a great religious figure, unyielding, the fearless Ayatollah's name, and issued a directive, attention, when Trump signed off on allowing Israel any military equipment capable of destroying Iran's nuclear program. And this is Allah Amini, who issued a directive prohibiting the Iranian government from developing nuclear weapons. Iran is just as much a liar as the Russians. They are the same worst people on earth. A terrorist people, a destructive people, a lying people. They have proven this for centuries that this is who they are. The Persians, the Babylonians, all of them are the Greeks, the Romans. All of them have been the best enemies of Israel for thousands of years. And today, all of this is manifesting again. Moreover, there are rumors that the Trump administration is preparing a military operation together with Israel. Special operation against Iran's nuclear program, because Iran is the only problem in the Middle East. This A terrorist people, a terrorist country just like Russia, is a terrorist people and country for the whole world. Not even China. You can negotiate with China. China operates through soft power. But Russia is a hard power. It's a terrorist force. It's intimidation. It's terrorism. It's murder. It's poisoning. It's to be continued. Kidnapping people, eliminating competitors, and so on and so forth. So it's a terrorist country. So in the Middle East, it's Iran. Thanks to Israel destroying all of Iran's friends, who have surrounded Israel over the past decades and were ready to destroy the Israelis. It just so happens that the best friend of Russia and Iran is Hafez al-Assad, the ruler of Syria, who drowned his own Syrian people in blood, who actually poisoned his own people with chemical weapons, while Russia flattened them with massive bombs, heavy bombs, killing millions of people. Syria has been destroyed by Russia. And in Tartus, this is a port. The Syrian one, which was handed over to Assad, to Russia for 49 years. For rent, there was a Russian military base. There are 2 military bases of Russia, one naval and one land. And suddenly, it turns out that for the past 3 years, while Russia was fighting against Ukraine, and it didn't have the resources to fight on other fronts and other vectors, Turkey secretly trained militants in Syria, the opposition. And suddenly, the militants, in 2 weeks, took power in Syria. Assad ran away to Russia with billions of stolen money, of course. For, so to speak, peace, you have to pay. Moreover, Assad was immediately hospitalized in Russia due to poisoning, which is also, so to speak, not a coincidence. And Syria got rid of this colossal tyrant and freak who was destroying his own people. The Russians thus lost the political basis for his stay in Syria. And today he is trying, in every possible way, to reach an agreement with the new government of Syria about keeping their naval bases in Syria in the Mediterranean. What are they needed for? Thus, Russia was a participant of the Navy in the Mediterranean Sea. And the Mediterranean Sea is an inland lake of Europe and connects Europe with Africa. Besides Turkey, Iran, the Caucasus, and Germany. Among the allies, according to the language of Ili, Lebanon is listed. The tyrant Gaddafi was also overthrown. And in Iran, 2 opposing Naudi factions formed in Lebanon. One is backed by the United States and the other is backed by Russia. And now, Russian warships are taking all the military equipment out of Syria to Lebanon. So Lebanon will also fight against Israel. That is, Russia has suffered a collapse in principle throughout the world, in all directions, wherever it has tried. Destabilize the situation. Russia has lost its ability to influence Azerbaijan's Yemen and Armenia. Nagorno-Karabakh has returned to the fold of Azerbaijan. Transnistria is also in a precarious position today and may return to the fold. In Moldova, Moldova, and so on. So here we have Syria. What was the point of Syria? Why? Did Russia stage a bloody massacre in Syria? Because Syria holds a certain strategic position. Here is Turkey, Europe, Syria, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, oil and gas. Qatar has huge gas reserves that could supply all of Europe instead of Russia. And when Europe was trying to diversify its gas supplies, from Qatar to avoid being politically dependent on Russia. At this time, Russia is waging war in Syria, so that two pipelines for gas and oil from Qatar and Saudi Arabia wouldn't be built through Turkey to Europe. That's the whole story. Of all wars, remember, in all wars, only resources matter. It's all about resources, that's it. And the Bible, in the language of Elijah, says the following. Savvaididan. And this is Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. The Arabians, they will ask, are you really going to Israel to take plunder from Gog? You see, Gog will be going after the prey. The Antichrist will destroy Israel because of the war with God. These are two different characters. Gog is the precursor, and the Antichrist is the result. Gog breaks the old world order, while the Antichrist offers a new one. Trump is the one who stands against Gog. That's why the Lord says, I am against you, this is against you. And the hooks, the iron ones, that's it. Trump. Do you see everything coming together? Trump is bringing back to America conscience and Christian identity. Trump is bringing back the Bible and the reverence for the Creator to America. Trump is removing, at least from the military, all the transvestites. This gay delegation which corrupts everything wherever they go. Trump wants to restore America to its normal state. America is corrupted. America is in ruins. Drugs. Today, Trump is closing all borders and deporting all illegal immigrants. Legally in America, it's really hard to come. Illegally, it's just madness. Illegal immigrants in America live off legal citizens. He's bringing order. He will bring order to Europe too. He wants to stop the war in the middle of Europe. He wants to put Europeans in their place. He also awakens Europe, to make them wake up and get their act together and think about new agreements, about a new world order. In contractual relations, about the new world order. Listen, it's going to get interesting now. So, Putin is losing Syria, which means Qatar is once again resuming negotiations with Europe about building a pipeline which could take 1 to 2 years to construct, so that Russia doesn't trade politically with its natural resources. This is exactly what is the answer for Putin. Not being able to continue the war in Ukraine. He has to continue it somewhere else, otherwise he will have to focus on the well-being of the Russian people. And these slaves, when they're angry, can't be fed with anything. They need to be distracted from the internal problems, which are enormous in Russia. They need to be distracted by some external enemies. And that's why the Bible says that this monster, this bear, will be turned away from the West by force. This is power. That same Trump who came in 2024, and by 2027, Putin must get this evil idea. There are enough reasons to turn south and go to war against Israel together with allies. Now, Putin is smarter. He invaded Ukraine alone. He wanted to prove to the whole world that he didn't need allies, as he would possess a huge military strength and power. He suffered a complete failure here. Now you understand that Israel, although small, has an army that is armed to the teeth with modern weapons, trained and constantly at war. And what? It will be very difficult to fight with her, as with the Ukrainians, because she is much more technologically advanced, more coordinated, organized. In Israel, the entire population can fight, including children and women. The coalition against Israel is already ready. Turkey, through its President Erdogan, is openly opposing Israel and threatening to occupy Jerusalem. And the destruction of the Israeli regime, as they call it, if it does not stop. It's war against the Palestinians. The Yemeni Houthis are shelling Israel. Iran is shelling Israel. Iran has launched a mass of ballistic missiles. He has thousands of missiles. So much so that Russia, borrowing missiles from Iran and North Korea, Iran, being in a constant state of wanting to fight with Israel, it may allow itself to borrow hundreds of missiles. Russia will be glad and happy that Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan are allied in a coalition. And there, Armenia, Chechnya, anyone really, it's written as the Caucasus. Well, that's clear. Turkey separately, the peoples of the Caucasus separately. Next, Lebanon from the south. And possibly even European Germany. Can you imagine what a powerful coalition it will be? And Russia will be at the head of this coalition. And they will splendidly turn from Ukraine to Israel. This means that in 2025, most likely, Putin will be forced to seek peace whether he likes it or not. Perhaps this pressure will stretch until the middle of 2026. In this year and a half, it will come to Putin. This is the very wicked thought. He will come to an agreement with this coalition, and certain changes will occur. Why? A conflict will arise, an undisclosed conflict, a political conflict, a diplomatic conflict between Russia and Israel. Today, Israel and Russia are already on this brink. Because on one hand, all the terrorists that Israel has neutralized have been found with the latest Russian weapons. The Yemeni Houthis, who literally closed the Red Sea, which is the main trade route to Europe, through modern Russian weapons. And all of this has already been clarified. Iran's nuclear program is advancing, so quickly towards the realization of a nuclear bomb thanks to Russia. Missile program. And North Korea's maritime program is being carried out thanks to Russia. Russia is the main terrorist in the world. Colombia in America is also protected by Russia. This is a drug country that corrupts all of South and North America with drugs. The main enemy, essentially, of the United States today, on the continent of America. Can you imagine? Russia is acting today like the Soviet Union. Russia had huge assets in Africa. She lost them. These assets have been bought up by China and European countries. Russia lost these assets because private military companies from Russia weakened in Africa. And now, also, Russia is losing the Mediterranean Sea, and specifically from Syria, it was carrying out all its military operations in Africa. So Russia is relocating today to unstable Libya, where two opposing countries are working and fighting. So it means in a deadlock, she has to reposition her ships somewhere. Russia can't bring these ships into the Black Sea. It's closed to military ships during the war between Russia and Ukraine. That's quite an interesting story. Russia has trapped itself in a corner, in a dead end, from which it needs some extraordinary way out. This exit is the only one. This is Israel. Israel is a colossal prize. Israel, it's the gendarme of the entire Middle East. If you destroy Israel, then you can consider that you've captured the wealth of the entire Middle East. All Middle East countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, they are armed to the teeth with American weapons, but they don't know how to fight. They are cowards. There's no one to fight there. So, Turkey, Iran, Russia, how the main beneficiaries of the wealth of the Middle East will distribute these riches among themselves. The point is, so if Russia takes over the Middle East, Europe essentially has no alternatives. Here, on the mainland of Eurasia and Africa, there are no options for obtaining any resources. In Africa, China and Russia. The Middle East, China and Russia. And also Turkey and everyone else. And Turkey, hating Europe for not accepting it into the European Union. Turkey, in this way, will also seek revenge on Europe and will dream of have a part, a share of influence, along with Russia, including over Europe. This is how all the circumstances are distributed. That's why Russia has only one option today. This is a war against Israel for the sake of plunder, to seize all the resources that supply Europe. And then it turns out China, Russia, and some minor satellites become the owners of the vast three continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Turkey and Iran will not have and will not carry much weight because only Russia and China are nuclear countries. Those fools who say that this is impossible because the United States of America protects Israel do not really understand what is going to happen in the near future between the United States of America and Israel. There are constant massive frictions between the two. Governments, because the United States has never allowed Israel to finish what it started. Specifically, it has not given Israel the chance to eliminate all its enemies so that it can live peacefully and quietly. This time it was Trump, not Biden, who also did not let Israel finish what it started. Trump forced the Israelis to sit at the negotiating table and back down. From military actions to finish off Hamas and Hezbollah. And now Israel is back in that old position. He just has to wait a few years until all the terrorists gather their strength and try to destroy again. Israel. Next, Trump will be caught up in the internal struggle in America. So much that it won't be able to be distracted by external intervention. Goga against Israel. Third, Russia, it's a nuclear country. And Trump defending himself. Israel won't be able to protect it directly because it would be an open nuclear confrontation between two nuclear countries. Moreover, Israel has its own nuclear weapons. Next, in order for it to arise after Gog's actions to destroy the old world order so that the Antichrist would arise. In Europe as a powerful leader who will unite it. It's necessary for the United States to lose its influence and authority in Europe. The question is, how can this happen? The answer is very simple. And during his first term, and in the second, Trump always wants to pull out of the North Atlantic military alliance, NATO. Trump, as a pragmatic businessman who is not a politician, has no political nostalgia for the past. Political nostalgia for the past. He can't understand why wealthy Europe, whose number is almost 500 million people, and in America there are only 350 million. Why can't These 500 million people make their own effective and powerful army that can defend itself. Why are there 350,000 American troops stationed in Europe today? Why does the United States of America need to invest incredible amounts of money? Resources, billions, billions, billions every year to maintain their own army. And of Europe, what makes Europe wealthy? The military industry contributes nothing. It has been protected by the United States for almost 80 years. Why? Why is that? That's why Trump says, defend yourselves. He's standing firm on this, and he will achieve it. And he will achieve this not only from one side, but from the other. The other side is that Trump today openly and directly claims a huge chunk of the Greenland archipelago. It's a huge island, a continent. In the south, having access to the Arctic. Since the climate on Earth has changed, I'll explain why. Since the climate on Earth has changed, several countries are claiming the Arctic. First is Russia, then Canada, third is Greenland, China, from some letter that has no connection to the Arctic at all. And of course the United States, which, together with Canada, have the desire to have a presence in the Arctic. Russia has reactivated 50 of its military units in the Arctic. She modernized the Soviet-era bases. Russia has also stamped out the largest icebreaker fleet in the world. She has more than 50 icebreakers. Because of the climate, glaciers are melting. And there is no more of that multimeter annual layer of ice in the Arctic Ocean. A new trade route is opening up. China is interested in this trade route because it brings in huge profits. Small resources for delivering goods all over the world, including the United States and Europe. Secondly, the Arctic is an area of vast resources, including oil and gas. Russia wants to fully dominate there economically, just like China. If Greenland becomes part of the United States, or is under open protection at least, thus the United States will have material law on the division of trade routes and resources in the Arctic. This is extremely important today from a military, economic, and political point of view. Sides. So, Trump is completely serious. We need to understand that Greenland is essentially an autonomous, in a certain sense, independent country. In this country, there are only 47,000 people. It is an autonomous territory with its own government, president, with its own elections. And Greenland is only formally part of the Kingdom of Denmark and is not dependent on it. Greenland received a colossal offer from Trump that is very hard to refuse, not to mention that there are American troops stationed there in small numbers. But there was, during the Cold War, secret military base where nuclear weapons were stored. During the Cold War. So, Trump openly, directly wants to do with Greenland an offer that is hard to refuse. Denmark won't stand in America's way. But we see that France is on Denmark's side. All of Europe howled at France and said, Trump, what are you doing? You're acting just like Putin. So you want something, but Trump has his reasons for wanting this and why he's pursuing it. In a way, he has a point. Neither Denmark nor Greenland can defend themselves if there is any military intervention from China or Russia. That's why Trump is very pragmatic in this regard. It will be Greenland One of the main reasons. Disputes between the United States and Europe. Trump isn't just blabbering, he won't back down from his desire to acquire Greenland as property. 1 second. Trump, openly. He's done this before, but now he's being tough. He proposes that Canada become the 51st state of the United States. I have quite a few acquaintances from Canada who have boasted that whenever the American economy goes through some difficulties, Canada always enjoys a certain level of stability. Is always experiencing some kind of difficulties, then in Canada all the time. A certain stability. But these guys never mentioned where this stability comes from. It exists. This stability in Canada has been thanks to the United States of America. The trade imbalance between the two countries is over $100 billion. In other words, America is dating Canada with its economy. In other words, Canadian goods are arriving in the United States at a rate of 100 billion more than the other way around. Moreover, today Canada is turning into an absolutely impoverished country, which, well, needs to be modernized. It's outdated, it's in ruins, there are terrible roads, everything is awful, not to mention the terrible and harsh climate, and the vast territories that Canada cannot physically defend. No, it doesn't have such an army or those kinds of resources, and this is a country with a small population. Right now it's probably around 40 million, but it used to be 30. That's it. Canada's economy is extremely weak because for many decades this country has been run by the Liberals. So people with a particular focus on conscience and far from God. That's why Trump is making another move that will cost him. A distraction from Israel, Europe, and everything else. And the third direction that Trump has set is to bring back the Panama Canal. Once upon a time, the Americans decided to dig a canal between South and North America, and they did this through military intervention, creating a country like Panama. Colombia lost part of its territory and so on. And before, in 99, I think, the Panama Canal belonged to the United States, and then they peacefully sold it to Panama for $1. There were certain conditions under which, if they are fulfilled, then Panama will manage this canal. But if she breaks these conditions, the United States will have the right, including by military means, to take back the Panama Canal. China quietly bought the Panama Canal legally, cleverly, by bribing Panamanian officials and so on. Today, China rules the Panama Canal. China has established its own prices for passage, goods, and the United States is suffering losses. China is getting dividends and bonuses are going to them. So thanks to things like this, China compensates its manufacturers through subsidies. The real cost of Chinese goods. And that's why Chinese goods are cheaper. Not because they are cheaper, but because the government subsidizes these goods and the money. They come from places like the Panama Canal. The same story. China bought up, in essence, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. That is, all the places where trade routes pass and any trade is conducted with Europe or America, China is there. China has also acquired part of Africa's resource base, which is why the goods it produces cost different amounts. China has used soft power to buy up half the world. And a large part of commerce in the world, with the inaction of the United States and Europe, that moved their production to China, and they lived and breathed fresh, clean air. Today, America and Europe are completely dependent on China. Trump also wants to break this model. He wants to bring all high-tech manufacturing back to America, making it independent from Europe and China. That's right. Today, the United States produces the largest amount of oil in the world. This is the largest oil exporter in the world. And put Russia in its place. This also means undermining the commercial success of Russia's resources, oil and gas in the world. That's why there's such a political and commercial struggle in the world, and all of this together. It works towards the fulfillment of the divine plan. So, the year 2020. I checked if the nations are ready for the New World Order. Yes, total control, a complete prison for the nations. People are absolutely ready to voluntarily submit themselves to the New World Government. Second, to submit to the New World Government. Second, a psychological break occurred. People were, during the quarantine, moved to another reality. And today they thrive and live in a virtual reality. Without any whims. In 2022, the forerunner of the Antichrist appears. An arrogant freak who is breaking the old world order, who is 80 years old, and who imposes a new model of world order on the world, which we will not be able to establish. All allies are revealed. This new model of relationships between nations in the world. And all this combined play, a pack of scoundrels, is the worst nations in the world. Divine selection. All the time through war and peace. It revealed the best and worst qualities in the nations. At the end of time, at the end of 6,000 years right now, where we are with you, in this coordinate system, the worst and best nations on earth have emerged. Today, the best people of Ukraine is fighting against the worst people of Russia. According to the book of Ezekiel, this monster bear with iron hooks will be redirected from the vector of the west to the south towards Israel. This will be his last campaign. There. Who will unleash this monster? Came to power in 1924. So those key years that I talked about, 22, 24, 27, already 2 out of 3 have come true. What is it? 17. The 25th year and maybe half of the 26th, a year and a half. Peace will be established in Ukraine. There will be negotiation processes. Military activities will be halted, the hot phase. Putin Gog will somehow need to find a way to further distract his unpredictable, crazy beggar, thieving, destructive people for a new war. Everything. The prerequisites are unfolding. This is Israel. Israel will give Russia a reason. He's balancing, but the moment will come when Israel won't be able to hold back and will take certain actions against Russia's best allies. Today, I repeat once again, a strategic agreement has been signed with Iran. If today Israel attacks Iran, destroying Iran's nuclear program, then the agreement comes into effect. About Russia's defense of Iran. We also see that Turkey openly hates Israel. The countries of the Caucasus. And there will be a presence in Germany. The government that will also be part of this coalition, this alliance against Israel. Israel will also, Germany will provide a reason for this. In a casus belli, something will happen that Israel might destroy. Some objects, how this is on blood, in which there will be very famous or important diplomatic representatives or government officials. This is usually a sufficient reason for war. At that time, America will not be able to directly protect Israel, other than with weapons and everything. Israel will be left alone to face this heavy coalition. Moreover, the United States will not openly confront Russia because it would lead to a global nuclear war. Here, because of with the strategic initiative, Trump will fall out with Europe. And Europe, in general, mostly, openly hates Israel and supports Israel's enemies, the Palestinians, and all their Arab allies. So, we have such an interesting story. The book of Joel tells us that this book consists of only 3 chapters. In the first chapter, we are told about how Israel fell and how it rises again. The second chapter talks about the war of Gog. It's all there. It goes into detail about how this war will take place. The second chapter of the book of Joel is about the war of Gog. And the third chapter is about the war of the Antichrist. So the war of Gog will bring about a colossal change in the relationships of the people of Israel with God. Today, the people of Israel, atheistic 450,000 written sectarians, Kabbalists. The sorcerers are not the same religious Jews, and especially the priestly tribe in Israel, so don't pay attention to them. These are the best enemies of Israel, who, for the most part, are against the state of Israel. They don't fight, they don't work, and they live off all the other Israelis. That is, these are religious parasites who have come up with this idea for themselves. An anti-Israel religion, and they do not stand by the Torah. They are liars. They have other Kabbalistic books that they rely on. In Israel, there are true religious Israelis who live only by the Torah. And these are the real ones. People who stand on the side of Israel. All right, now I'm finishing with something important that we also need to understand together. The world has entered a new reality. The new reality is that the world exploded today. The presence of various types of artificial intelligence. There are paid ones, free ones, available for all people in commercial enterprises. Incredible. Space technologies of artificial intelligence. They do everything. Artificial intelligence today does homework. For students, artificial intelligence today works for workers. Artificial intelligence is improving. He makes videos, audio. And today we also entered a new era and are using artificial intelligence for translation. All the truth that I proclaim in English, we tried to translate into other languages. The best result is in English. The first messages have already been translated. Right now we are reopening English-speaking channels. And I ask all of you, please, I will provide you with the links next time, and these new links will be in the YouTube description under my video. Please come in. If there are fewer than 100 subscribers on a YouTube channel, it doesn't display properly. In the form of numbers, no title. As soon as there are more than 100 subscribers, the channel name Heaven's Patriots and Voice of Time in English will immediately be displayed, according to the name we gave this channel. In Europe and America, spread the truth from these channels in various Christian groups. Look for comments anywhere. The truth must become accessible. Also participate in this whole process, as this is all paid work. But thank God and some faithful believers. Today we have the resources to carry out this translation. We can accomplish everything I've said, translating all of this into English in just a few months. In 4 months we can translate all the most important things I've said into English. So this is the power. Now the question is about spreading. Please, there will be links. Subscribe. This is an important issue. Now I will conclude on another important Keynote of today. All the events in the world over the past 2,000 years, and especially now at the end of times, all these events, on a global scale, these are just the spiritual signs of our Lord's return. Humanity is 6,000 years old. This corresponds to the 6 days of creation. In 6 days, God created the material creation, and over 6,000 years, God creates the spiritual creation. 6,000 years is divided into 3 parts, each lasting 2,000 years. The number 2 is a testimony. The number 3 represents the divine Trinity. In the first 2,000 years, God was looking for his followers, and there were only a few. There were few people on earth at that time. They were mainly led astray by fallen angels. And we know God's followers such as Abel, Seth, Enos, Noah. They followed God individually. They are like stars in complete pitch darkness. Next, God determined another 2,000 years. And during this time, he created an earthly people for himself through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Over 4,000 years, and thanks to God's people, God was simultaneously conducting a divine selection among the nations. Satan also built during this time. Through 4 empires, Babylonian, Mediterranean, Greek, Roman, built his perfect model of world governance. Through the Jewish people, God was able to shape a selection over 2,000 years for the creation of a sinless body so that he could materialize selection among Jews for production. A sinless body to materialize. And when God materialized, the third phase of divine work has entered the ERA for the creation of the heavenly God's people, the church, a spiritual people. The Jewish people were soul and body in their faith and lived on the first floor of God's house. On the second floor of God's house lives the church, and on the third, God is with the angels. That's our story. So, between the first and second coming of Christ, there are exactly 2,000 years. God is a great mathematician. We do not know the day and the hour, but we can know the time and the year. When Christ was asked when he would come for the second time, he explained. This is also in Matthew, chapter 25. I think it's 26. And in the Acts, he clearly explained and said, Look at the events and circumstances. 2,000 years is the age of the church. In the end, I will restore the Jewish people again. God cut it down in the year 70, and the shoots began to appear again in 1948. The state of Israel has been revived. But not all at once, but gradually. In 3 steps, Israel expanded his lands that were given to him, and also regained control of Jerusalem. Today, Israel, by the way, has occupied the Golan Heights in Syria because of the regime change in Syria and so on. Regime change in Syria and so on. So, all the events around this time are about the return of our Lord. We have the parable of the 10 virgins. This is a very important part, where the Lord speaks, the bridegroom was delayed, and the virgins all fell asleep. Then they fell asleep. The bridegroom was delayed. It's been 2,000 years. The virgins fell asleep. This is the church. Laodicean, which over a considerable period of time gradually became lukewarm and thus lost its initial heat. It eventually stopped being hot. The church fell asleep. This is directly the time. After 1995. Since 1995, in the 90s, we see the explosion of church activity, the last explosion, due to the collapse of atheism mega-states of the Soviet Union. That's it. This was essentially the last chord of the church in terms of evangelism. Starting from the year 2000, the gospel came to a standstill. The churches began to decline steadily. Fewer and fewer people were around. People were going into the world. Listen carefully here today. The 2000 years of the church age ended in 1996, plus or minus 1 year. The reason for this is that our current calendar is off by 4 to 5 years. Scientists from around the world claim that the climate on Earth has changed, and we can see that too. But the reason is not the anthropogenic variant of human activity. The reason is that in 1995, the Earth's core began to heat up sharply. The Earth has started to rotate faster as well. Time. The flow of time on Earth has changed. There is less time now. It's slipping away quickly. And this indicates that the Lord is returning, and he has shortened the time of great tribulation, including in this way. In this way, time is just flying by. There's so little of it, it's not enough. In the past, days seemed to stretch on forever, but now they pass in an instant. All processes, climate changes on Earth are mainly due to the Earth's core. Hell and heaven are located in the center of the Earth. There it is happening. My moments of awakening, the 2000 years of the church, ended in 1996. The core is heating up in the year 95. You see how everything is interconnected, and now I will tell you another important part. But at midnight a cry was heard, and I believe that this cry is my voice. Look, the bridegroom is coming, welcome him. The exact time of the Lord's coming, only I know today. Today, I am revealing new brothers who are being clever and making things up. They see the words of Daniel, they see that the calculation of 2000 years must be counted from the crucifixion of Christ. And yet they are being clever and bending the truth. Some by the year 29, others by the year 33. I assert that the Lord will come in the year 36. The next 3 important historical years after the 27th. These are 29, 33, and 36. This is the time, the last weeks of the time of the Jews. In the year 27. Sorry, I got interrupted. I didn't finish saying the Gok. Putin and his coalition must invade Israel and lose. The war will not last more than a year. Why exactly at this time? Because to stop the hot phase of the war in Ukraine and to resolve diplomatic disputes, to negotiate peace, it will take time, and most likely it will take about a year and a half. In order to carry out a multinational intervention in Israel, it is necessary we need to plan a military international operation in different languages, with different mentalities, different weapons, and different preparations of various armies. Why is North Korea participating in the war against Ukraine in Russia today? Because thanks to North Korea, Russia is learning how to interact with the army of another country, with a different language, mentality, with a different preparation and perception of reality. This will give Russia experience in how to negotiate with Turkey, Iran, Libya, and the Caucasus, and even Germany most likely in the war against Israel. This is preparation for that. For the development of such a military operation and the preparation of the armed forces, Russia will need about a year and a half. And this is exactly what we are getting. The year 27, the war, according to Joel, will most likely not last more than a year. The territory of Israel is extremely small. If during the intervention 200 million from China, intervention's 200 million from China, and European troops that will come to the valley of Jehoshaphat. It is located from north to south in Israel. So, the army and Gog, this whole mixed coalition of allies will come instead to the valley of Kidron, which is located to the south of Jerusalem, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan. So, this will be a war of a different scale and a different speed. And in Joel, it is described that the army of this coalition will advance quickly. They will most likely also advance from north to south and will come to the valley of Kidron, where the Lord will take place. He will fight the final battle with them and destroy, annihilate this entire army. Its remnants will flee to Russia. Russia will be burning along all its borders, because all the countries from which Russia has taken territories will be reclaiming them. This includes Ukraine, Finland, China, Japan, and some European countries. And some European countries like Moldova and so on. And the islands and Crimea and everything you want. In the parable of the 10 virgins, we are told, the bridegroom has been delayed for 2,000 years, and the virgin fell asleep. The moments of the 90s, and then she fell asleep. This is after the year 2000. The church is simply in a deep slumber. But the main point is that at midnight, a cry was heard. You need to understand when it is midnight, when it will be. The church will hear this cry. Not the whole church will hear it, only the 10 virgins. So, listen, I don't know if you know it or not, but there is a doomsday clock. Our God is great, not only because of the signs in the sky. Today Trump has started to fulfill his commitments. January 20th. On the 21st, the planet parade took place. 6 planets of the solar system lined up almost in a row. And exactly on January 31st, that is tomorrow, a 7th planet will be added to the 6. Just imagine what all of this is showing. The emergence of a new era. The year 20, the preparation of the nations, exam. Yes, the nations are ready to be nations. The Antichrist. They are ready to be governed, a leader into a new world order, into a new era. The year 22, the forerunner is destroying the old world order. In 1924, the one who opposes this, the forerunner, arrives and will finish him off and bring the world to the plateau of the new world order. Because the Antichrist will be the best friend of Israel for the first 3.5 years. So there is the doomsday clock. This is a project of the University of Chicago magazine, Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Started in 1947, when the Americans saw the power of the nuclear bomb they had developed. Nobel laureates, scientists, the atomic scientists, came together and presented the concept of the doomsday clock, where they will monitor events in the world to conceptually, clearly show the world how close it is to the end of civilization, to complete destruction, because they understood that nuclear war means the end of humanity. And so every year they provide a report and present to the world based on political, military, and economic events how close the world is to its end. The end is midnight. Listen carefully. Today, 18 Nobel laureates are part of this council. At the beginning of the 25th year, the hands were moved. There are only 89 seconds left. This is the shortest distance in the entire history of the doomsday clock. There are 1.5 minutes left until midnight. And I assert that midnight will come when the Gog will go to war against Israel in 1.5 years. In 1.5 years, a coalition and military operation will be prepared, and it will take another 1.5 years to go to war against Israel. Here are those 1.5 minutes. These 3 years, the year 27, after the year 27, it will take some time, about 2 years, for Israel to recover, and for the whole world to come to the conclusion that Israel has the right to build the third temple. The United Nations will grant this right to Israel. And a new world order will be proclaimed on earth, bringing peace and security. There will be no wars anywhere in the world because the main producer of war, Russia, will be destroyed, along with all of Israel's enemies. This will happen in 1927. And so, as we have the details described in the book of Ezekiel, Israel will be fueling for another 7 years. Military that this coalition will bring with it for military equipment, that Israel will collect bones for 7 months of the fallen soldiers. It also says there will be a whole cemetery. On the east bank of the Jordan River, that is in Jordan, there will be a huge cemetery for this coalition. And on that same cemetery, Gog himself, Putin, will be buried. And this cemetery will be named after him. Putin's cemetery will be in Jordan. How will he end up there? When the coalition, does he win or lose? The ruler must come to encourage his troops in defeat or to claim all the glory. That jerk, monster, will come there. In order to gain glory, it will seem to him this war has a 100% chance of winning. In the end, he will face complete defeat and will be killed. He will die a violent death. Here are the events that happened today. China has blown up the whole world with the artificial intelligence it created for almost just 6 million for free. Americans are investing billions in artificial intelligence. It's incredibly powerful, modern, and everything else. It turned out today he was just that, the explosion of a nuclear bomb. The Chinese offered artificial intelligence for free. It turned out today that it was stolen, that the Chinese, as always, robbed the Americans who were developing their artificial brains for huge amounts of money. Here. But in any case, China has produced such a thing today. Intervention and, in essence, a nuclear explosion in the field of artificial intelligence. And in 1 week, all the shares. The stocks of America's IT giants have fallen by $1 trillion. Today, America lost $1 trillion in just 1 week and continues to lose. I want you to understand how serious all of this is. Artificial intelligence today. These are different programs. They have incredible capabilities. Incredible capabilities. You often watch works of artificial intelligence on the internet thinking that a person created them. No. Today you can write just 2 lines and artificial intelligence will create a massive video for you that lasts several minutes. And it will create real people, real voices, and it will write the text itself. It will create the script itself. It will produce all of this for you, and you'll be amazed that it all came from just 2 lines. And it will all be several minutes long. It can go like a whole movie. This is just the minimum, which artificial intelligence can do today. Not to mention translators and everything else. The little things it produces and does. So, the world today has come to the moment when the Antichrist, in anticipation of his coming, real instruments appeared, which are described in the Bible as the image of the Antichrist, who will be worshipped, and whoever does not worship will be killed. So that's the story for you. Time is compressing, that is. We're waiting, everything is moving so slowly. Suddenly, at a certain moment, everything happened all at once. Gog, Trump, nations, artificial intelligence. You understand? The turn towards Israel, Syria, in general. So much going on: Greenland, Panama, Canada. So, brothers and sisters, Canada. So, brothers and sisters, we are no longer at the breaking point. The break happened earlier. In 96, 2,000 years came to an end. Scientists have proven that in 1995 the Earth went crazy. It keeps getting warmer. It keeps spinning faster. Time is flying by quicker, and there's less of it in a day. Some scientists claim that out of 24 hours, we only have 16 available today. If you divide that by 3, considering how much we sleep and everything else, we've essentially lost 8 hours. Although we've only physically lost a few minutes. In the end, we are with you a minute and a half before 12 o'clock. Even from this side, the question midnight, which is revealed to us. In the parable of the 10 virgins, look at what's happening. The Lord has created an external factor that naturally Christians cannot pay attention to, because it needs to be done by the Lord. A minute and a half until 12 o'clock. At 12 o'clock there will be a cry. The church will awaken when Gog goes to war against Israel. 3 times 30 seconds. There are 3 years left until the 27th year. In the 27th year, the war against Israel is inevitably going to. I assert that it will happen, and we will see it together. Plus or minus 1 year for everything. For some reasons, why do I say these things? Dates. Let me explain one more point. Some say that the difference in the calendar is 4, 5, 6 years. Some people like the number 5, but I prefer 4. The reason is another artifact that the Lord. And it shows because he said that the sky is a sign. Scientists have discovered the asteroid Apophis. They named it that because of its trajectory. Flying past the Earth, the closest of all asteroids of such a huge size. It is extremely dangerous for the Earth. And here's what they calculated. That it will approach the Earth and fly past it. In the 29th year, but it won't fly far away. Through the Earth's gravity. Its orbit will change. It will fly around the moon and return exactly in 7 years. Here's the beginning of the week. And it will return in the year 36 and will pose a threat to the Earth. And I assert, what is said in the Book of Poisoning is that an asteroid will fall from the sky into the Mediterranean Sea, and it will be the asteroid Apophis. These are the artifacts that the Divine Lord allows us to see and understand. This stone will be a physical material manifestation. The stone of Christ that will destroy the Roman Empire. The last Roman Empire, that very Babylonian idol, struck at its feet. And the idol will be destroyed. So this stone will also destroy the Mediterranean Sea. It will become the Dead Sea, just as today the Dead Sea is a grave for Sodom and Gomorrah. Mediterranean Sea. In the book of Revelation, it will be destroyed by this asteroid. It will become the Dead Sea. A symbol of the fact that the Roman Empire is a perfect result. The satanic state creation will be completely destroyed and annihilated. The reign of Satan will come to an end forever. Period. These are the kinds of events we are seeing 20, 22, 24, 27, then 29, 33, and 36. The time of the last week. From 27 to 29, we will see, will enter the arena. The Antichrist, a young man, a politician, a scientist, a businessman, a sexy type, a handsome guy with blue eyes and incredible intelligence, someone no one can stand up to. Today, Putin, a vague, convoluted, deceitful intelligence that twists the truth into lies and presents lies as the truth. There hasn't been such a politician in the last 100 years. In modern history, Putin is Gog. Russia is a melting pot of friendly nations. All these are the worst destructive peoples who have no place in the millennial kingdom, especially not on the new earth. They are needed to be an army, the Antichrist, and that's why they exist, and that's why the Lord allowed them to exist in the end times. Because God must take revenge on Satan. He must take revenge specifically on his world order. In the world order, there must be the worst nations of Satan. That's all we have today. Let's move forward in Christ. Hurry up. Bring them. Get your affairs in order. Get your little jars of oil in order. Grow, strive, aim. There's no time. I'm telling you about years. I'm telling you about a minute and a half. This is our unique Lord who gives us answers, but we cannot see them without Him. I had to speak longer today. I haven't spoken for a month and a half, so I talked for 3.5 hours. With the Lord, all who love the truth fall in love with the Lord, experience Him, gain closeness with Him. A husband and wife, closer than they are to each other. There is no one. They should hug each other, kiss, and bear the fruit of love. These are our true relationships with our Lord. If you don't have them, if you aren't forming such relationships, then you are in deception. Religion teaches you that God is incomprehensible, that there is no access to God, and there is no office where you can sign up to meet Him. So one day God personally came to us and betrothed us to Himself, and then He left. And now He wants us to come to Him, and we came to Him spiritually, and so that our love and our connection would be heartfelt, genuine, authentic, and honest. That's it. If you produce these relationships during the period of life that God has given you, you don't know when it will come to an end. So be afraid. And you know that you might not have enough time, even though many of you have already lived. In 20 years in Christ, when He comes, He will physically, materially meet you, and you will see for yourself if you will be able to hug Him. Because to many He will say, "Depart from me, I do not know who you are." Because all hugs are decided not later, but right now. Spread all the videos, spread the truth, spread this word, because Christians worship and love. Words not about Christ, but at the end of everything, they have commercial plans for themselves. They build what else can be invested and what cannot. Distribute it all over again. I repeat, in the coming days there will be links under my messages to the English language channels Patriots of Heaven, Petrus, of Kevin, and Voice of Time. We will be duplicating. Everything will be in English there. We need more than 100 subscribers. Please be kind, be serious. Subscribe. Then YouTube will immediately post it with your name. Otherwise, it will be posted with some random number. We don't need this. And spread it in English. You live in America, you live in Europe, many of you. Please spread it among Christians. Make sure to cut it out. And most importantly, don't forget to download. Because what I'm saying, for a long time, most likely it won't survive on YouTube. At midnight soon, it will be midnight. And my cry will be heard by all. Because what I'm saying, I assert, I'm ready to bet with any fool that Putin is Gog who will attack Israel. That God is not the Antichrist, that everything will happen by the year 2027, and so on and so forth. The time has been revealed to me because it is not closed in the Bible. For 2,000 years, God did not tell it to anyone. There was no point. And today there is a point, and we do not know the day or the hour until the beginning of the last week. At the signing of the agreement between the Antichrist and Israel, from that moment on, exactly 7 years according to the lunar calendar, 7 multiplied by 360, and you get the day and hour. That's it. A new era. God in the flesh is returning and will never leave us. Hallelujah. We are waiting in the right way. Build yourselves up with the Lord